Hello, welcome. This was unexpected and it is going to be just improvisational. Can I use that word? CWS, you're first in the chatmosphere. Hello, blessings to all, blessings to you. Thank you for joining. If you're joining from Facebook or Twitch, I want to thank you for joining from those platforms as well. And as you come in, I'm going to greet you as I want to get into what I want to talk about, but I want to welcome everybody and just thank you for coming on a short notice, okay? So as you see, I am dressed in scrubs today, okay? I haven't had nursing attire on for a long time. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about my experience, my testimony as a nurse. And I always say I've been a nurse for over 33 years, right? I've been a nurse for probably longer if I were to really calculate the years, because I was a nurse extern. So that's a student nurse that works and learns. I was also a nurse for my grandmother when she was injured by a vaccine. So my grandmother, I've told you all, was crippled. Okay, she contracted polio from a vaccine. And I want to talk about that because it begins to help me understand, and it may help you if you're wondering why did she become a nurse? Some people wonder why don't you go to medical school? And I did dabble with the thought of medical school. And my father was going to be a doctor, physician. So that was one of the things he was going to do. So I always felt like, well, I could kind of like live out what, you kind of want to complete things if your parents tell you that, oh, I would have been a doctor, but I did this, I got married to your mother. So those were kind of some of the things, like I would have been a doctor, or he would have played for the Detroit Pistons too. My father was a basketball legend in Philadelphia. So he basically, I have this medical influential thing in my family. My grandmother on my great grandmother, my grandfather's mother, adopted mother, I'll say, was a doula. Okay, so she was a doula in the South, and she didn't have any children for birthing in terms of herself. So she and her husband were childless until my grandfather came along. Now, it's a mystery about his origins. And I've told you all that I believe that he was an orphan trained child. So it's one of those things that I have been figuring out. So my grandfather, growing up in the South and moving to the North, as many of my relatives did. I'm going to mix a lot in with talking with you and look at it as a historical context, a historical oration. So it'll be my testimony. It could fit into what you have observed as well if you've lived to see certain changes in healthcare and our society as a whole. So I'll start with, okay, I started with that. That's my health in terms of lineage. All my people, they come from the American South, okay? So they have stories of coming up from either South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, as well as Phoenix City, Alabama. So that's all I know in terms of my origin in America. And I'm going to be unpacking more of that as well, because I'm starting to understand my identity and my relationship to this land. And I'll get into that at another time. It might even factor into what I'm going to be talking about, because this is like every sphere in terms of you think of shalom. Shalom, that word has always meant a lot to me. Shalom, it is the wholeness. It is being whole. And that is what I've wanted for myself, for people. That's partially why I got into nursing. Because my grandmother being the patient of the family. If you all know what it is like if you have an infirmed family member, someone that has a chronic illness that it's not going to just go away. You know what I mean? There's no pill, nothing. If you've lived with a family member who's chronically ill, that takes on a lot of aspects in terms of the dynamics in a family. So my grandmother, she would be in a wheelchair sometimes, or she would rally sometimes, and she could walk and ambulate with holding a cane. So she would either do the cane or wheelchair. And we lived in West Philadelphia with the type of homes that have steps, and it wasn't easy to have a wheelchair go up and down. So my grandfather was the caretaker for my grandmother. We did as a family. I had two aunts that were very young, so they were still in the home when I lived with my grandparents, me and my mother, after my parents' divorce. So everybody, it was a group effort to get my grandmother in the tub. And I talked in my title, I said, America needs a bath. Okay. I was going to title this, something else, but I won't say it right now. There's something we say in our family. It's a kind of a family joke, wash your what, but it's the way it's said, if you get my drift. But I was actually going to use that in the title, but I said, no, I won't do that. I shouldn't care about people being offended so much, but I don't want to just be outright offensive if I could help it. Okay. I'm going to offend people. I do it every day. I lose friends. My little Facebook thing goes down 1 or 2, or it was a time when I was losing so many people on my Facebook friends list. And I had to actually delete a few people that were abusive. So I can get that, but it's not that serious. If somebody doesn't agree with me, I don't delete them. That is just so childish, but I'm, getting off on that stuff. But social media is a part of our life now, and it's causing people a lot of mental distress. So yeah, we'll put social media on the table. I'm not going to just edit myself if it naturally flows. So I don't have any slides. This is me being look, Nurse Jenny being raw with you. I put my scrubs on, and shout out to my friend, a nurse who shares so much of what I believe in. I've worked with her, and she and I, we had the same, we exactly identical lab coat. So we would always, laugh about that because we had the same one. But she has been so instrumental during this time period from 2020 on. Even though we work together, we have traveled together, we've talked and cried together, and over these years, 3 years since 2020. So I appreciate her. So I'm wearing this. This is a shout out to you. I don't say her name. You know why? I'm going to tell you why. She and I have gone to rallies together. She has been abused and treated so poorly for being a patriotic person. She has been, when I tell you, this friend of mine has been persecuted, okay, for wanting to do the right thing. And it's so much so that I won't even mention her name. She just knows this is to you. You know who you are, and I love you, okay? So yeah, she's been through colleagues looking in her social media to see if she supports Trump, we are living in a society that behaves that way. And it's unbelievable that I can't even say her name because she's still out there in the trenches. So where was I? Having a grandmother who was injured by a vaccine at the University of Pennsylvania. And my family never followed up because a lot of times certain groups, I'll say, they don't want to rock the boat, if you know what I'm saying. They don't like to maybe go after justice, things like that, because of other reasons. My family was thrust into international news headlines also, and that came because of my experience. So you kind of feel like, I don't know, sometimes if you go through certain things, you don't rock the boat. That's what I'll just say with that. But they could have at the time probably done something against the University of Pennsylvania, and that's before they had these immunities that they have now with the current, you can't do anything to the pharmaceutical companies, right? You sign things before you get jabbed and all this stuff. You sign releases. I don't know what you all signed, if anybody took it, but you know what I mean? Sometimes you sign saying that you won't do anything legally. So living with a grandmother who, like I said, was sick sometimes. She seemed okay. I normalized her illness, but I was the kind of kid that, because I was, my mom was at work, and this is how families used to be. My mother didn't need to send me to daycare. My grandparents took care of me. We lived with them after my parents' divorce. So I was a little helper. And I would go and get my grandmother's. I knew the pills she took. I knew pharmaceuticals. So she had all the amber pill bottles. And all I know is I would go up to her room, and she had one of those vanity trays that ladies used to have. You know what I'm saying? Like a mirrored vanity table. And instead of having perfume bottles like I would see at other people's grandmoms' homes, they were glamorous and they had all these pretty perfume flasks. No, my grandmother had all sizes of amber pill bottles, lots of them. And I would go and fetch her medications, run upstairs, go get my Darvon. That was one of her pills, Darvon. And she also took, at some point, she had to take insulin because She was on prednisone, and prednisone causes a lot of disruptions with your endocrine system. People gain a lot of weight on prednisone. But another thing that prednisone has as a side effect is it changes a person's personality. So I grew up with a grandmother who was irritable a lot. She had her good times, and I learned how to read the temperature of the room. I was the kind of kid that I would do things to make people laugh. I don't know. I learned how to be humorous because when I was a baby, my parents lived outside of Chicago in Gary, Indiana. And my parents, I would always hear fighting, like bad fights, really loud. And they would scare me, these fights. And my mom would just be terrified. You know, she would run into the bathroom and lock the door and things like that. And I knew the temperature of their marriage, our home life. So I learned how to make my mom laugh. And I wanted her to laugh because I would see her crying a lot. And I have a particular thing about my mom crying. I don't take well to people that make my mother cry. And it's probably because of those reasons of seeing my mother cry a lot and, you know, be put out of cars or being threatened to be put out of the car. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So, you know, always a lot of drama. So I learned laughter as a form of medicine, I guess you could say. And I wholeheartedly love people who can bring humor, especially humor in what you would think bad situations, you know. So that's part of why you may see me being kind of silly a lot. And it's because I wanted to make my mom laugh. And I continue to make her laugh. I love when my mother is laughing and she laughs. It's loud, you know, it's like, you know, it's like one of those laughs that you hear when you're outside playing with your friends and she's laughing in the house and you're like embarrassed, like there's your mom again laughing, right? And all of the women in my family, they laugh the same way. So when my aunts would come over and I'm outside, you know, in Philadelphia, you have driveways. Like I grew up in Mount Airy, so I'm in the driveway playing with my friends, and the window is open, and all your aunts or aunties are in there laughing. Like they would sound like witches to me because I used to be angry because shut up, don't laugh so loud. But they would have so much fun, you know, just a lots of fun. Those were the days, you know, and that was when my grandmother was alive and families got together every Sunday. And we were a tight-knit family. So we learned to be the caretaker for my grandmother because my grandmother was the matriarch of the family. She was a woman she ruled our family to a great extent. Not that my grandfather wasn't a patriarch, but he was such a gentle person. He was the most gentle person I've ever known. He had a lot of power, but he didn't have to always be with the machismo stuff. He didn't have to tell you he was a man. You knew he was a man. He didn't have to bark at people. But I'll tell you this one thing about him. He was so peaceful. Like he had us when we were little, we would get in, you know, circles and we would do like, you know, and we'd be, you know, doing that because he was into Eastern religions. So he was just super peaceful. He studied Gandhi and things like that. But I've seen him angry twice. And I'll tell you this, one of those times that he got angry, he went upstairs and he got his rifle. Yeah, he got his rifle out and he was headed somewhere. It was something that happened with one of my aunts and a boyfriend. Something bad had happened, but he didn't use the rifle. But that's the kind of grandfather I had. He was as peaceful as Gandhi, but I've only seen him angry twice. And the thing about people that are very peaceful like that, as they say that deep waters, they're still. Deep waters are very still. And when you trouble those waters, you don't want to see a person like that get angry. And that's the kind of grandfather I had. And he was such a good caretaker of my grandmother. He absolutely honored her as a wife in terms of what I know. Now, he was a very good looking man and, really good looking man. I'm not saying he was a perfect man, but I've heard little whispers. My aunties said something and they ruined my perception of my grandfather by insinuating that he might have had a side chick or two. And he may have had a side chick or two, but that's not my relationship. He didn't do anything sloppy. If he did, I would have known nothing of it. Okay. And my grandmother was sick. Think about that. Their bedroom was two beds, because she was so sick. They didn't have a marital bed that was together. Or I've known my grandfather to sleep in the middle room, as we called it, the middle room. So there was a place in a time in their marriage where he slept in the middle room and she slept in the master bedroom because of her illnesses. So you can see how a vaccine injury can change a whole marriage. Do you see? I'm about to get deep on you guys. I'm sharing. If you got time, I'm going in right now because I feel that I should. So, excuse me. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, change their marriage. My grandfather, he was the kind of man, he was so peaceful that my grandmother, she nagged him a lot. She nagged. I remember hearing her scream his name in the house, Charles, Charles. And I would get so angry at her. I had this kind of like a love-hate thing with her. And I'm crazy about my grandfather. He was the most perfect man that I've ever known in my entire life. And I mean that. I mean that. So I would watch him be so patient with her because, again, she was in pain constantly. Remember, she developed diabetes from all of the medications she had to take. I mean, they were always trying things. She was going to the University of Pennsylvania's hospital. We lived in West Philadelphia. And they were, in my opinion, they were experimenting on her. I really believe that now. If you've ever heard the story about Henrietta Lacks, I would tell you that we need to get to a place where we could hear about what's happened to Black people in America without feeling like you have to be defensive or get triggered in any way. But we need to talk about that because what's happened to us is tied to everyone's freedom. I'll even go that far to say, if you don't care about what's happened to Black Americans, then it's going to blind you to what's been done to all of us. We have been a conduit, like they've done a lot in the medical community to Black people. And I'm not talking about other people that come and immigrate here. I'm talking about the people who only have traced their people back to here. They don't have a home. I don't have a homeland. I don't have a homeland to come and help me out. I don't have dual citizenship anywhere. This American South is my homeland. Okay? Capiche? So things have been done to the people who share, I'll say who are from my tribe, if that's okay. My tribe. It's been a lot of funky stuff done. From Henrietta Lacks and her immortal cells. This Black woman named Henrietta Lacks, she was diagnosed with cancer. Now, they took her cells. They did not tell her that they were going to use her cells for testing and research. Some of you might know the story, but I feel like I'm just going to be freestyle right now. I'm going to go because this is going to be a record, historical record. Okay, so Henrietta Lacks is being treated by the medical establishment, and her cells are being siphoned and used for cancer research and other things without her knowledge. But the thing is that when you sign those papers, the paperwork, I'll be talking about lots of paperwork. When you sign these agreements, you need to know what you're signing. They're playing with my phone. My camera. How's it looking? Can you hear me? Can someone let me know if you could hear me? Because I see the camera light going in and out. I'll wait until you let me know if everything's okay. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, so Henrietta Lacks, her cells were used, and when she died, they continued to be used. Her family found out it was some, kind of accident, I guess, or some, I forget, I have to refamiliarize myself with the story. But her family ended up finding out that her cells had been used. Now, they were not compensated, and it's not even about being compensated. That's the least of should be our concern, right? Because you can't compensate for that type of violation. There's no compensation. So they have been making money in the billions and untold billions off of this woman's cells. I'll say, allegedly, if you want me to say allegedly, okay? And her cells have been called the immortal cells. Now, if you want to get deep, and we can do that, I love when you get deep in the chatmosphere. Her cells are called the immortal cells. Why is that? Immortal cells. And when we think about a lot of movies and things like that, we can unpack a lot of movies. X-Men, anybody? X-Men? And I won't go into the tinfoil hat stuff, but I want to stick to this. And okay, so they're using her cells, basically. That's the foundation of so much when it comes to medical research, especially in cancer research. Okay, a Black woman. Wow. A lot of people, they would have a problem with that, And that's where we're going to have to get over it, because again, what's been done to my tribe, if you care about it and if you want to really do some research, that's going to be the kind of paperwork that you could take to the world court. You know what I'm saying? It's the kind of stuff I can see. I can just imagine myself putting together a really nice case including the CDC, the FDA, all of these criminal organizations. So, and corporations. So my grandmother is in and out of the University of Pennsylvania's hospital system. And she was given things like they were doing immunoglobulin kind of therapies, interferon therapies. They were doing lots of stuff with her, I remember. And she was the kind of woman that she was very proud. You know how women used to be? My grandmothers were the kind of women that they wore nice clothing, you know, in terms of not fancy women, but they were just well put together, very feminine. And their hair was, you know, done. My grandmother had a lot of issues. She had beautiful hair and she lost her hair. It grew back in, but it was very thin. So she would wear wigs to, you know, just look nice. And she wore turbans all the time. And, you know, it was all normalized for me. And when she would go into the hospital, one of the things that she would say is, don't let me look any kind of way. You know, do you have women in are you that kind of woman? Like, you know, it's like the woman who goes to the beauty parlor before she delivers her children so she could look good in the hospital bed. So my grandmother was the kind of person that she did not want to look bad while she was a patient. And I'll tell you, that helped me as I became a nurse. My grandmother had 4 daughters, okay? And if you have 4 daughters, you shouldn't be looking like buckwheat laying in the hospital bed, okay? You shouldn't look like buckwheat, right? But I've seen Black women looking like buckwheat in the bed. Don't get mad. Everybody gets the smoke, okay? And it's no being sensitive. I'm being real with you right now, okay? So this is how we talk, you know, it's how I talk to my mom. In fact, I was talking to my mom this morning and, you know, we were chatting. This is what inspired this conversation, okay? Now, I would have loved to have had my mom talking with me, but she's not quite ready for YouTubes, okay? My mom is the kind... She's from Philly, baby, but the N word will fly out of her mouth. I don't know. She's a real, like, look, my mom is a real little fancy lady, but the N word flies out of her mouth at times, and she's not ready for YouTubes, okay, at this. And you know what's funny about her? Even though the N word flies out of her mouth, she looks like a Irish Italian woman. Looks like a whole Irish Italian woman, okay? And I'm like, look, sis, you better stop it, okay? Don't have me in this supermarket fighting for you, because they'll look at you and think you're a white woman. Don't keep that in the house, in the kitchen, this kitchen table talk, okay? So, you know, my mom always had a slick mouth. Or a slick mouth, as they say. My Aunt Eleanor, who was another one that looked like a little Irish Italian woman, as they get older, it starts telling on them, right? You know, they start. I would see my mom and my Aunt Eleanor, if we went shopping, you know, they could tear shopping up, okay? They're in those stores, and I'm looking for these chicks, like, where are they? And they start melting and merging into all the old white ladies. And I'm like, where's my mom? I'm looking for her. Where I'm scanning. This is my experience, okay? I got to scan through all the little old white women to find my mom. Oh, there she is. Okay, so yeah, she's that kind. She came up in a different world. I'll tell you about that Philadelphia world. You know, I told you a little bit about it, but okay, so yeah, I would have loved to have her right here talking. But yeah, okay. Moving on. So I was talking to her this morning, and my mom is obsessed with baths. I told you I call her Bath Sheba, along with other nicknames. And her whole thing, I told you, if anything is wrong with you and you come to her with an ache or pain, take a bath. Go soak yourself. You'll feel better. That's her answer. And ginger ale and dry crackers, right? But that's the answer. You broke a nail, go take a bath. Go soak your ass, is what she would say. Go soak your ass in a bathtub. That's the answer. Go soak your ass. And it's not a bad way to take care of things, you know. Just get in a tub and soak your ass. Yeah. So there's a lot of wisdom to that. And I began to talk to her about how I remember healthcare. I'll get back to my grandmother in a minute. Okay, so I remember healthcare when I came through the system. I was at Temple University and I worked as a unit secretary at Chestnut Hill Hospital in Chestnut Hill, Pennsylvania. I'm naming names, okay? I'm naming names, baby cakers. So yeah, I worked at Chestnut Hill Hospital and I worked in the neonatal, like the labor and delivery maternity unit. And I worked in X-ray file. I was X-ray file technician. Then I moved up in the world. I became a, unit secretary. And basically, you're a translator for terrible handwriting from doctors. Oh my God. I used to have to read the hieroglyphics of their handwriting and figure it out. And you have to be careful because medications, the pharmaceutical industry, they make the medications sound very similar. And you remember some things that went down because of that. Remember Cedars-Sinai and the babies that received all the heparin, remember? And yeah, because that sounds like something else, right? So that happened. I'm jumping all over the place. And so I worked in the maternity unit while I was learning that's a great way to become a nurse, is go through certain steps. Unit secretary is a fabulous place to start, and you basically are like, you're the big honcho of the floor, actually. I was a little young gal, and I'm basically running this floor in a way because they depend so heavily on the unit secretary. You make everything flow. You're the glue. And you're like what would be equivalent to a unit secretary in a hospital? I always said they were the glue that kept it all together. They're kind of like air traffic controllers. And I guess you would say they are the project manager in a way, kind of. I mean, you got the head nurse and all the nursing manager levels. They didn't have a lot of those levels, but the unit secretary could really do no wrong. Everyone depended on it. So it was a great place to learn medical technology, which I was learning in my other position at Chestnut Hill. And then I decided to go ahead and become a nurse. So my grandmother died while I was while I was a unit secretary, because I remember when she died, this is before cell phones, everybody. I was working at Chestnut Hill, and I didn't take her death well. She died at home, so it wasn't a hospital thing. But one thing that happened with her is one of my family members, they kind of freaked out and called the ambulance. And the ambulance came and they took her to the hospital and they put her on artificial life support. And that's not what she would have wanted. So when I went to see my grandmother, I knew she wasn't in that body anymore. And, I looked at her, and it was this forced breathing, you know, what the ventilator does. It's very forced, and you hear it's so unnatural. And she would have wanted to just be left at home, you know, but I'm not trying to name the person who did it. They didn't know at the time. I mean, you do things. This is a knee-jerk reaction. But a lot of people would be better to just die at home and not go to the hospitals and be put on artificial life support. I feel differently about it all now. I really do. So I remember working, and I would call my grandmother sometimes because I couldn't believe that she had died. You know, I couldn't believe it. I would call her and I'd break down at work crying. So I went ahead and went to nursing school. And I remember having to double up on so many courses because somebody told I had my mindset that I would be in a certain class, and it was like kind of unrealistic. And the counselor at Temple, I won't name your name, but I remember your name. You told me, "Oh no, you should take these more spaced out," because I had to take prerequisites, because when I went to Spelman, I was an economics major and a computer science major. So I didn't have the classes that you would need to go to nursing school. I needed to take microbiology, anatomy and physiology. I had to take an anatomy and physiology lab and all that kind of stuff, which I was prepared for a lot of that stuff because my stepmother at the time, she pushed me into honors classes when I was in high school. I went to Germantown High School in Philadelphia, and Bill Cosby went there. And he went to Central too. I know you Central people want to claim him, if you still want to claim him, but Bill Cosby went to Germantown too. You're not going to take that away from his history. So he went to Central. So, and he went to Temple. Am I following Bill Cosby? But anyway, oh gosh, I have a lot of Bill Cosby intersection stuff, but he never did anything to me. Okay. On the record, Bill did not do anything bad. I have nothing bad. I never met him personally, but I'm just saying lots of intersection, but we'll talk. That's how Philadelphia is. Philadelphia is like a big town. That's all. So anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. In high school, I also went to Southwest DeKalb High School outside of Atlanta. And at that high school, I lived with my dad and my stepmom for a little while, for like 2 years. And so I attended the high school. No, a year I attended the high school, Southwest DeKalb. And I took this anatomy class. It was intense. I was the youngest kid in the class, and these like kids, they seem so much older than me, and I was just that's something I want to tell you guys. If you want to push your kids, just know that I'll tell you how I felt, even though it wasn't but maybe 2 grades ahead that they were, I felt very insecure. And when you feel younger, the older kids, they kind of baby you sometimes, and they may pander, and they don't mean to, but you're like little to them. And in high school, you always want to act like you're older. So I used to feel a little bit insecure around them, because the girls, they were just so like mature. They were wearing lipstick, and they had all these fancy clothes in the 80s. It was so much fun growing up in Lithonia. Come through. That's where we lived, in Lithonia. That's when it was all new, tract homes. It was really interesting. So a lot of the older kids would take me under their wing. I started hanging out with older kids, so I was kind of like cool, But I took this anatomy class, anatomy and physiology, with a lab, and my stepmother, she gave me her dissecting kit. I know this is so super nerdy right now. Can you imagine getting a dissecting kit? That sounds really like Dexter, kind of like in the making, right? But it was this, I'll never forget, it was like army green, and it folded out with 3 openings, and it had like scalpels and all kinds of tools for doing surgery. So I had that in high school. Can you imagine? I could have, if I wasn't so balanced, huh? Imagine all the mischief I could have gotten into. But yeah, so I had her kit, and then I would we had frogs, but we also had cats. We would look at cats and all kinds of different animals. And I remember having the test where they had the animal set up, and you would have to, like when you had your dissecting kit, you remember it has like a little hook on it so you can lift up the veins, and they would color the veins so you would know the difference between the, the different ones. So you would have to lift it up, and they were numbered, all of the parts, and I would have to, name all the muscles and all kinds of stuff and have tests like that. So that was in high school, and that gave me a very good foundation. So when I did go to nursing school, when I took those prerequisites, I was ready for it, even though this counselor wanted me to slow down. But I like, sometimes if I want to do something, I jump really hard into it. So I said, no. I'm going to make it for that class. I'm going to be in that class. And she was like, whatever, sis. Guess what I did? I doubled up. I don't know. You could do this stuff when you're young. And especially when you grow up in a place where, like, the kind of Philadelphia I grew up in, it's like this overachieving kind of thing that I'm looking at it now is very unhealthy. So you can push yourself too hard. And what I did was, I couldn't get the classes in the time frame if I went to one school. I went to 2 different schools so I could fit all of this in. I worked. So I went to Montgomery County Community College, and I took my microbiology, my labs. Then I went to Temple Ambler, Ambler had other classes. So I went to 2 different schools for the prerequisites. I had to take, what else? I forget right now, but I got them all done. Hardly any sleep. And I think I did go out and have fun too. I don't know how I did these things in my 20s, okay? I didn't, I couldn't do it now, of course, but you push yourself hard. So I made it. And I love looking at somebody who told me that I couldn't do something. That's part of my personality. So when I was able to present the class, like the grades, and I got, B's or C's, like whatever I got, I think I got B's or whatever. I presented those transcripts, and I paid for all of the classes, because when you go to community college, it doesn't cost you that much, So, but I am all messed up with student loans. So I'm not going to try to act like I'm not owing student loans $1 million. And listen, government, I'm not paying it, okay? And I'm going to tell you why I'm not paying it. I don't care. You could judge me. So anyway, where was I? Okay, so, where was I? I was at the point of, yes, I presented my transcripts, and I got admitted to that class. And my nursing class at Temple University was very diverse. Lots of really interesting people. We had every ethnicity, you had your white people from Kensington, was not what it is now, okay? But Kensington, Fishtown, stand up, Philly Johns. You had your Northeast. I'm from the Northeast. These are the people that say, if your name is Sherry, they say Sherry, and Sherry. That's a Philly accent, sherry. So that's how they talk in the Northeast, sherry and Tony, you know. And so I had the South Philly, you know, Italians. I shout out to my Italians, my paisanos out there, right? Yes. Oh yeah, I knew some Italians for you. I went to school with the grandson. What was his name? Nicky Scarfo, one of the mobsters. I went to school with mobsters' grandkids. Yes, the kind that back in the day when you would watch the news back in Philly, if anybody knows Philly Jawns, you know what I'm talking about. The nightly news back then, it was like mobster war. It was mob warfare going on for Atlantic City. This is all around the time of Atlantic City, the casinos. So you had the New York families fighting the Philly families and Jersey families, you know, they were all fighting, man. And then on the news, you would see them all like, pow, 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 pow. Like they look like Swiss cheese. And they would take pictures of them. You know, the cameras would be down there, Action News, you know, Action News would be down there. Yeah, by the cheesecake. I think somebody was popped near one of the cheesesteak places one day. So you're watching the news. Can you imagine the trauma that I have gone through? I'm looking at the news back then. It was like crime porn. So they would show the dude, the mobster, all shot up in the car. He's all like Swiss cheese in the car. He's still sitting in the car. He's still driving. And it's just like, dude, okay? And I was like, dang, okay, that was crazy to grow up like that. Wow. Boy, I do need to write a book probably. So yeah, it was real wild in Philly. It still is, but it was a wild time. Okay, so back to me talking about why did I even get on that subject matter of the Philadelphia mobsters? How did it get there? Why? Bring me back to the point where I was. Anyway, I was saying I went to school with all kinds of people at Temple. So it was cool. You know, I had the black kids. I'm calling them kids, right? Then I had, you know, I hung out with a girl from Allentown, right? And she was, oh my God, the most fun. And she was mixed with Italian and German and, oh my God, from a really big family that fought. Like one of her brothers, he got so mad, like they would get into bar fights. I was like, wow, right? You know, I'm like this Cosby kid, and she's telling me about her siblings. They would have bar brawls. One day she said one of her brothers was so mad. Check this out. He took a fire hydrant and he lifted it out of the ground. I was like, are you kidding? She would come to like class with like like a cast on, and I was like, whoa, what happened? She's like, oh, we just got in a fight this weekend, me and my brothers and sisters. I was like, damn. I'm like, wow. But she used to have like the big hair, like the teased out hair that you have in Allentown. If she's watching, I don't know, she probably hates me. All of my nursing friends hate me, so I might as well just tell these stories. I burned all my bridges. So yeah, she wore the teased out mall hair, right? And it was awesome. Big hair. I had big hair in the 80s. We had the big hair. And so she had that big teased out mall hair. And when she would come to class and stuff, let me tell you, our professors at Temple University School of Nursing, they were like villains. They were villains. It was us against them. If you went to nursing school at Temple University and you got through it, whoa. If they still have those Jawns that we went through with, they were like villains from central casting, some of them. Okay? They were villains. And my friend you know, with the teased out hair. One of the villain teachers, he was one of our clinical teachers. He told her in front of everybody, like, it was so embarrassing. He was like, uh, don't come back to my clinicals with that mall hair. He called it mall hair. He called it mall hair. Do you hear me? I was like, shady. He was like, he could read you for filth. And he got us together, though. We had to look, I couldn't come to know the clinicals like this. Are you kidding? You couldn't have earrings that show, little stud earrings and no nails and all this stuff. You couldn't do it. He would roast you if you came. He was so shady, and they would get together, and I'm gonna tell you, it was us against them. And when we realized it, we band together. My class that graduated from Temple University, we were their worst nightmare. Worst nightmare. I don't know what happened, what planets got together. I don't know how we came together, but it was the most unique group of people that you would ever want to just be among. We had everything. We had the gays, we had the mixed race people, we had the Boricuas, we had the Africans, we had the, like I said, we had the Italian paisanos, we had the Irish, we had the this, we had the that, we had the Russians, we had it all. Did I say the blacks? We had the blacks, my tribe. And let me tell you, one of the black girls, she was not to be messed with. We made her our spokesperson because she was one of these Jawns that would, let me tell you something, she was deeply melanated, beautiful woman. In fact, my friend one day said this. I'm talking, okay? I'm talking. The friend I told you about with the mall hair, one day, you know what she said? If you listen, when you're friends with a black person, what they call black people, I'm just using the term just so we don't have to get into too much. We don't have to get a dictionary and have a meeting. But when you have a black friend, this is something you don't want to say. Okay, this girl that I'm talking about from our class, deeply melanated, chocolate, like really, really like, but so just, tall and powerful. This is what my friend told me. She said, I'm not going to say the person's name, but she said, I like so-and-so. She's pretty for a dark-skinned girl. She said that to me. She says she's pretty for a dark-skinned girl. And I was like, I heard that. What do you mean? Now you may have grown up with a friendship, a black and white friendship, or a black and white marriage. Listen, I done been through the black and white marriage thing. My father, when my parents were divorced, he went through a phase of white girls, white women. Okay, so all these white women would come because my father's like super handsome, tall, basketball player type. So those white girls would come. I'd be looking at you like, oh, it's a new one today, huh? She's blonde. Oh, this one. Oh, this redhead. Oh, okay. Well, he settled on a Jewish woman who looked very exotic, as he would say. She had hair. She could sit on her hair. It was that long. He loved her hair. He would always talk about it. Her hair was like its own personality. So we talked about her hair a lot. I could talk about that. That's a whole nother thing. But anyway, when this friend, mind you, I'm in nursing school, okay? When she told me that this girl was pretty for a dark-skinned girl, I had to get to educating her about why that's not like, I wasn't going to stop being her friend over stuff. We had a good friendship. Like, we dealt with, we talked about taboo subjects. So that's how it's going to be. If you're going to be my friend and you're white or whatever white is supposed to be, and you're this and you're that, just know we're going to have a real friendship. We're going to talk about the stuff that some people are like, oh, we can't. No, I like that kind of very honest, comfortable kind of thing. So my white friends know we could talk about you could ask me all the crazy questions about my hair and all kinds of stuff, and I'm not going to get mad at you, okay? So, excuse me. Let me get another. T. Witten said, pretending I understand. So this is how it applied. I had to tell her, just, you might want to be careful saying things like that because it's so many touchy subjects. You can walk into a minefield, okay? But anyway, she was just so much fun. All that to say, T. Witten, I know I'm going all over the places. I had an eclectic experience. We had everybody, okay? And we had to come together because this is what tends to happen. Everybody can be kind of cool, but everybody in Philadelphia, I'll tell you how it is. You could have friends of other races and different things, but sometimes everybody, they gravitate to their own little circle of their tribe, if you want to say it. So even though you're cool with all these different people, the white girls that you hang out with or the black girls, they may do things and not invite their white friend. You see what I'm saying? Or the white girls may have a shore house and they don't invite their black friends to the shore house. You see what I'm saying? But you don't like get upset. Like, you learn to navigate it if you can be mature about it. But you do notice that people do kind of start clicking up together in their little, what is it called? Like, Philadelphia is a bunch of neighborhoods. Like, it can be segregated. Like, you have Irish neighborhoods, you have South Philly that was known, certain parts are like Italian, and you have Mount Airy where I grew up with Jewish and black people. So we were the Jewish and black thing is like this in Philly. And, so the professors were so villainous that they caused us to like balkanize. We came together to protect one another. So we were so tight and we put away the racial differences. Like, we had, like I said, we had gay people, we had some older people. Like, if you're older, that's also a category. But we got together, and we had Asian students, we had it all. And we got together and we figured out we had to fight them. So Sonia, oh, did I say her name? Damn it. Scratch that. So the very, very like chocolate, very melanated woman, she could talk. She was like a Johnny Cochran type of charisma and wording. And she just demanded respect. Her personality, you know what I'm saying? She was so powerful. So we would send her to speak for us because they would have tests that were not fair. You could see where they were trying to trick us. And if we all like had a certain answer and we're like, wait a minute, that should have been this. And then this woman would go fight for us. She would go get meetings with the professors and she would speak for all of us, and she would have the exams changed. Okay. Stuff like that. I think she later went on to something that dealt with justice because, some nurses become attorneys. I thought about that at one time. So she was just that person, and we had to fight. We had to fight our way through that nursing program. Now, we even had, I'll never forget, we had one woman whose sons, like, she lived in North Philly, Puerto Rican lady, her sons got into a fight where one of them pow-powed the other, and she's cleaning off the stuff that flew. I'm not going to say it flew out of her own son on the walls. So when we were close to finals, this happened to her, and we're about to graduate. Do you know those professors wanted to, because she couldn't make a lot of like classes and stuff. And we were like, this is what we would do. If somebody was falling behind, we would get together and help them so they didn't fall behind. And we realized this happened to this woman, and she was an older woman. And we said no, because the professors were like, well, if you can't come to class and you can't take your exams, then you'll have to go to the next class behind. Like she would have to fall back and go through 2 years, what, or whatever. I don't know how much time she would have had to go back. But she, we knew what happened. This nursing student fought for her, and I think we all might have gone to the offices that day. And we were like, oh no, you're not going to do that to her. And you know what? They hated us because we were such a unit to be reckoned with, such a force. And they had to, relent, and they allowed her the grace so she could finish nursing school with us. And you know what I'm going to tell you? When we were, I'll get to it. I may cry at some points, okay? I might. So, so she went ahead and graduated. Then we had an African woman who, she was married, and we loved her so much. She was so like sweet and petite. And we were like protective of the ones that were more vulnerable or fragile in any way. And she had a baby. She had gotten pregnant during nursing school, and the villainous professors, they were going to try the same trick with her. They were going to, oh, well, congratulations, but you'll have to go to the next class. And it's like, what? No, we weren't having that. We helped her too. So she was at graduation. That's right. And a few others, but we couldn't save everybody. Now, some people you can't save. So we start out in nursing classes. You start out with hundreds of people, and the ones that end up graduating, you know how college is meant to, what is the word, everybody? What's the word when you dwindle down? I know the word, but I need help right now. It's not coming to my noggin. It's a process of weeding out, but it's another word, how they weed out what they would see as the weak ones. So when it's time to graduate, you have this small class, especially at Temple University. So we were a small class, okay? And I mean, I had an Indian, one of my girlfriends, she was from India, and I would give her rides because she didn't have a car, and I would pick her up and bring her to school and, take her home. And I got to know her family, and I was very protective of her. She later went on, and she's a doctor now. You're a doctor, right? Fancy pantsers. But I love her. Like if I'm in Philly, I go and see her and her family and kick it with her and eat that yummy Indian food, which I love Indian food, you guys. So, we were like the United Nations, okay? And we had the hippies, the stoners, and we had it all. But we had a girl, she was so sweet. Her mother was in a nursing home, and she would talk about her mom all the time. She was half white, half Jewish, half black, right? And she, sometimes mixed people, they have to be the blackest one, they're blackety black. She was one of these people, she always speaking about black issues, and we would look at her like, girl, shut up, but it was like in good fun. But she was always trying to be like Angela Davis, black blackity black black. So then she had this Jewish mom, right? But she loved, like, this girl honored her mother. She honored her mother in a way that it touched my heart. So her mother's in a nursing home, and a lot of times we would have to help each other because she would have to go and check on her mom. She would drop everything to go if she needed to do something for her mom. And she would get after those nursing homes. She had to transfer, I remember, her mom to a different nursing home because of the poor care. And she was the kind of daughter who was always there. Those nurses in the nursing homes, by the way, nursing homes are horrendous places. There may be some good ones out there, but you're going to pay $1 million to be in them. Because what I understand, the hotel industry have, assisted living places. You know what I'm talking about. I had an aunt that stayed in one owned by, I think, the Marriott Corporation. Those places are fabulous. You feel like you're at a resort. But if you can't afford that kind of old age home, nursing home, you are in a trick bag, especially if your family doesn't show their face a lot. If your family allows you to look like buckwheat laying in a bed, those staff members are going to treat your loved one in a way that is not world-class care. I'll just say it that way. So this girl was always up in these nurses' faces. If they didn't clean her mother, they let her mother have a diaper on too long, she was right there. She was there letting them know, no, you will not treat my mother that way. And I guess they were wondering, because she had that like black girl vernacular, she did her. And I guess they were like, what's going on here? But she would jump on them like a cheap suit, and they would straighten their butts up. So when we graduated, this is all going somewhere. We got to be so close. Let me tell you what. And I hung out with an Armenian girl. Yes, Armenia. So one of my friends she was Ukrainian. What am I saying? Ukrainian friend. I had a really good Ukrainian friend. She would bring me the food and stuff. It was so good. So what was I saying? Oh, we got to be so close, and we truly loved one another. We've never had a reunion. Can you imagine? It was like we never some of us stayed close somewhat, but I had this inspiration to gather, because we were about to graduate and we had been through hell. It was like hell, 2 years of pure hell with these villain professors at Temple University. And we, not all of you were villains, if this gets back to some of you. Not all of you, but enough of you. If you were a good one, you know who you are. I'm still cool with you if you were one of the good professors. But this is a general experience that we had, and I can't lie about that. We were under fire for 2 years. And like some of our instructors, they were not mean, they were hard. Like we had one professor, and she was tough, baby. She was real tough. She was a lesbian instructor, and she was tough, kind of had like a more masculine thing going on. But one thing about her, she demanded respect too. She was one of the smartest people. She was so hard. She put the fear in us. And her class was very hard. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a science class, very heavy duty science. And she didn't play. We had regular scheduled like quizzes, because she made sure we had to keep up, because she could quickly find out if you weren't going to make it. So this was a really hard class. really, really hard. But you know what? I ended up being really close. Like, she is somebody, even though we feared her, we all respected her. And she lived in my neighborhood. And I found out, like, she wanted a cat, and we had, like, my mom, we always have kittens and stuff happening. So one of my mom's cats must have had a kitten. And I remember me and my mom dropped it off to her. You know, she came to the curb and got the kitty and whatever. So, we had a really, it was interesting. So it wasn't that all of them are bad. I heard that she passed away, in fact, but I wish we would have had more closeness after graduation, right? So anyway, we get through this amazing crucible. So as we were getting closer to it, I wanted to do something as a gift for everyone. So I collected everybody's baby pictures, all of those professors. Can you imagine? And you know what? God has a funny way of turning your heart sometimes. It's very few people that are going to look jacked up and evil in a baby picture, right? So here I am, and this was probably an exercise now that I think about it. God wanted me to have forgiveness. So I didn't just ask my class members to give me a baby picture of them. I asked the professors also. And they were really like, wow, you want us to be, because I said I'm doing a little gift for everyone. So I took pictures, current pictures of everyone, and I made sure everybody looked good in their picture. You know, you could be shady and have people looking all crazy. I made sure they looked good, even though I didn't like a lot of them. And what I did was, one of the girls who was Ukrainian, I told her what I wanted to do, because we would like hang out in class sometimes. And I was like, I want to do a gift for everybody, but I have to tell somebody. I'm going to keep it a secret. And so I let her know. And so she became my partner. And we went to at the time, Temple had an AV department, and somebody helped us to learn how to do slides. So I got one of those projectors, and I had all the pictures made into slides. And so she helped me get things done, because you didn't have the ease of now when I put things together. So you can see I was doing a lot of this video or imagery stuff for a while, now that I'm seeing it. So I put things in a certain order. So I had the instructors go first in my order. You know how it is, the tray, the circular tray, and you're putting all your slides in. And so I started probably with the professor that was most evil. And I had her baby picture. Can you imagine when I saw the baby pictures of these villains? I was like, oh, one of them that was so evil, she was so cute. And you know, back in the day, 50s, when they took pictures, or 20s, I don't know how old some of them chicks were, but she was, posed so cute in the little ruffles, and you could see it looked like she was loved. She wasn't a villain, right? So I had to fall back, like, wow, when people are babies, wow, right? So I put all of these together, and I had been almost like an unofficial photographer for my class. So I was always taking pictures, and we would get together. We were drinking, and we were the type of, I would hang with the crazy hippies, and, we would just have fun, and we go out clubbing, me and my, the German Italian with the big hair. We were in the clubs, and oh my gosh, she would take me to Irish pubs. And let me tell you another thing that we had to talk about. I was in that Irish pub down in South Philly. You guys know, if you know the Irish pub, real popular Irish pub in Philly. And so she hung out there a lot. And I was like, because she would come to the black clubs with me. So I would go to the Irish clubs and whatever. So I was like, yeah, let me try this out. I had never been to an Irish pub. Well, let me tell you, it was so crowded, and we're pushing to get through. Guess what one of those Irish Jawns did to me? Guess what he did? all of the sudden, I am feeling something wet all in my hair. He poured beer on me. Is our Irish brother in the chatmosphere? Because someone tell me why somebody thought that was a good idea to throw beer in my hair. That didn't go over very well. And you know what? My friend, she was like, why are you so upset? And I had to tell her, look, okay, my hair is one of these things. I can't just rinse and repeat like you. I have to go through a little bit more. And I'm paying some kind of money sometimes. And throwing beer in my hair is going to make me mad. Simple and to the point. Okay. So she had to, like, I was kind of in a bad mood, but we got through that in our friendship. We're still friends to this day. That's my sister. I love her. So these were some of the things that happened, right? You know that, PH, you don't pour beer in a Black woman's hair. That's not, and he was having fun. He was like, laughing. I was like, I gave him a look like, I know you didn't just do that. What made you think that was a good idea? But I'm not one, I didn't go off or anything. I just chalked it up to the game. I was an Irish christening. There you are, an Irish christening. Thank you for explaining it. If she had explained it that way, I wouldn't have even been in a bad mood. Okay, so I had an Irish christening. Got it. Okay, so back to the slideshow. So I had this set up in such a way, different things that we were out, can you imagine? We were the class that we did things socially together. So we had lots of pictures. I was always, and I told people, like, if you went to your thing with your little clique, give me some pictures. So I collected pictures, and when I put it together, it was played at our baccalaureate ceremony. And if you can imagine how powerful that was, I didn't know it was going to be, I didn't know why I wanted to do it. I get my crazy ideas, and I was just inspired to do this. And guess what music I set it to? Because yes, I like music. If you don't like that I put music in my stuff, I'm sorry. I just love it. So I had the music by, do you remember the singer? He was a young kid. His name was, oh boy, Tevin Campbell. Tevin Campbell. He had a song called, it was so beautiful, Tomorrow. It's like, tomorrow. He had such a high range, I couldn't even possibly. Tomorrow is such a, like, when I say a beautiful song. It was produced by Quincy Jones, and I know I have issues with Quincy Jones, but I can't negate the fact that Quincy Jones produced some of the most beautiful music. So I had that song playing. I don't know how I did it. I transferred the slideshow. Oh no, the slideshow, I had a projector and I had a screen. So at some point they play the slides start, and it's the instructors as babies, and then it goes into them as adults, and it went right through to everybody in class. Can you imagine? We're looking at the baby pictures of all of us. It doesn't matter. You're in India and you're in your traditional clothes as a baby, and we get to see what you look like. And we just had everybody to that music. And they made the lights go down. So when the lights went up, there was not a dry eye in that building, and it was everybody's families were there. And it was a gift, it was a gift. And I didn't know that it would be such a, it was something I can't explain. And we graduated, and it was so awesome when the friend that had the mother that was in a nursing home the whole time, when we had another one of our, because we had different ceremonies. We had a baccalaureate ceremony at one of the historical churches in North Philly, and her mother was up in a wheelchair, I'll never forget, in the balcony of the church. So when she walked across that stage, she had something like a sign, and she held it up. She was like, "This is for you, Mom." And we all cried. We all cried that her mother made it to her graduation. And that's how much we loved each other. So when I graduated, my first job was, it was at Crawford Long, Emory University in Atlanta. So I work on the floor, med-surg telemetry, but our unit was so special. One of the units I worked on there, we were the unofficial AIDS unit. And we were the unofficial AIDS unit because I was not afraid of AIDS patients. I don't know what it was, everybody. I was not scared of them. And I listened to the news. This is when I was a Democrat. I was listening to the news all the time, the nightly news and all, and they all had these scary stories about AIDS. You know, I remember the AIDS, remember the flight attendant, he was like a French Canadian, and they had deemed and labeled him as patient zero, and they claimed that he was the first one to bring AIDS into the United States. And they had this whole like narrative that he was gay and he would go to bathhouses in New York City, and then he would go to bathhouses in San Francisco, and he was spreading AIDS in the gay community. Well, you know, that was the narrative they were pushing out at that time. And they even had a book called "And the Band Played On." And that book is about patient zero and the early days of AIDS. And his name factors in big time. And a lot of people, younger nurses, they may not understand why I was so passionate about the stands that I would take. It's because I've been in the trenches a long time, and I have watched a lot happen. Okay, so AIDS was the pandemic. I'm going to say it. Yes, I'm going to say it. And this is when the gay community were getting, like I said, out in the streets, and they were demanding research and development into the AIDS crisis. They were demanding money be put into it. There were some underground type of warriors. There were some researchers that I believe they broke ranks with the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, I'm going to get tinfoily right now and see if you remember this particular incident. It was a conspiracy theory at the time, but allegedly there were a few research scientists in the AIDS research and development, and they saw what was going on. And I believe they were close to a cure, a pharmaceutical cure or something. And they realized that politically, that wasn't what was wanted. A cure was not wanted. In fact, you can't even say cure. And I told you about working in the pharmaceutical industry. I worked, and one of my products was a cure for Helicobacter pylori bacteria in the gut that causes ulcers and GERD and all kinds of things, right? Well, we had found a cure, and we were shut down by the FDA. We couldn't use the language. They took all of our detail material, our product circulars, and, you know, monographs and everything. They took it all away from us, and they had us they scrubbed the word cure. So I know they do this. So these research scientists, this is the alleged tinfoil hat conspiracy, is they had come up with something. They realized it was very dangerous, a la Dr. Timothy Jarrell Cunningham, kind of knowing that they were in danger. So they were headed overseas, I believe, or some kind of medical conference or something. And they had gone underground, like basically they were going to do something like on the level of making it out of your garage type levels, right? So they happened to be on that flight out of Lockerbie. Do you remember the Pan Am flight out of Lockerbie? I won't say what happened to that plane. Can someone tell me if they know what happened to the plane out of Lockerbie? Is that Scotland? I forget. Where is Lockerbie? I'm waiting. I'm going to take a little sip. Lockerbie, the Pan Am plane. What happened to it? Okay. Thanks. Wait, Empress said. Right? What if it's true that there was a group of research scientists on that Pan Am flight out of Lockerbie? What if that is true and it isn't a tinfoil hat conspiracy? Has anybody ever looked into it? Do you know if that's true? But that was the buzz. That was going through the grapevine. And Dr. Fauci factors into this. So I had him already. I knew his name. Oh, the guru. No, it wasn't Finnegan's Wake. That other Jawn that's right down. Okay, it's right when you're near Bainbridge. It's near Bainbridge and near South Street. Big Irish pub, big one. But not Finnegan's. I don't think is Finnegan's Wake over by. Where's Finnegan's Wake? Because I could be wrong. You might be right. It might be Finnegan's Wake. I don't think it is. I remember it being another name. But so I now am in the AIDS era of healthcare. I not only witnessed HMOs come through, because while I was a nursing unit secretary and I worked in hospitals, so I was around hospitals a lot, I watched how managed healthcare came in, and a lot of the quality of care, I watched it change. But I watched it really degrade over these years. I watched it degrade so badly. It is unreal how bad healthcare has become. And you remember when the HMO plans came through and they gaslit us about this being such a great thing to do, right? And when I worked at Chestnut Hill Hospital, they had amazing benefits. Even though I was a unit secretary, I had the most amazing benefits. And at that time, when you worked for people, they had really good compensation benefit plans, and they did a lot of incentives, and they tried to treat the employees a lot better than now. But the hospitals were clean, and they were just organized and managed a lot differently. Now, I heard that, a lot of the hospitals were being bought up by foreigners. So I've heard that a lot of Saudi businesses were buying hospitals. And you know how the hospitals started to balkanize, and they were partnering, and some hospital systems were very vampiric and parasitic, where they were buying up all the small hospitals and becoming a big hospital system. And that's when I watched how it became colder and colder and colder till it's now a polar vortex. So working in Atlanta in the AIDS epidemic at its height, I watched people, they would come in on a Monday, and by Friday, like, they were barely making it, because they would admit them with diagnoses, because it was a lot of secrecy, of course. People didn't want their diagnosis to get out. And this is before HIPAA, right? Yeah, kind of around the same time as HIPAA, I'll say. But it was very guarded. We had to guard people's diagnoses like you can't imagine. So we would give I didn't give them, but the diagnoses that would come in, they would say fever of unknown origin, or failure to thrive, or of course you could do dehydration. So AIDS patients were being admitted with those diagnoses. So as soon as you saw those diagnoses, you already knew. But our unit had become the unofficial AIDS unit in Atlanta. And like I said, I was not afraid of AIDS patients. I didn't put gloves on. I would touch my patient's hand, arm. I would, fix their hair, give them a massage, with bathing, of course, gloves. But when it was just like, if I'm going to give you a massage, put the moisturizer on the skin, I would do that with my hands. I would even empty the Foley bags, empty the Foley bag carefully. I didn't have gloves on back then. And that's before they were with the universal precautions, like real crazy, you know what I'm saying? But the patients would come in barely making it. And these were white men, usually, on my particular floor. I would notice that they were white men that were in their late 30s and 40s. They had really high powered jobs, like they were architects, they were in entertainment, they were attorneys. They were very, very high powered men. And they would be on our floor because we weren't afraid. Other nurses were terrified. You know what I'm saying? Terrified. So I told you the story before. One of my patients, they would come in on a Monday. They were weak and everything, but by Friday, they were at death's door. And this one guy, he was dying. He was going through the dying process. And I had been his nurse. We would tend to keep the same patient. So he knew me. And I was about to punch out because at that time, they didn't have 12-hour shifts. So I worked evening shift. So it was from 3 to 11. And so I was about to get off. And, I'm in Atlanta. I'm young. I could go and do things. But you know what he asked me? This one patient, because there's some you'll never forget. Well, he asked me, he said, "Jennifer, I don't know how to die. Would you stay with me?" And I was going to punch out. And I was thinking, whoa, because usually people die in the wee hours, like 3 in the morning, 3-ish, 4. That tends to be the time that a lot of people exit life. So I was just thinking, oh, this is going to be a long night, because I could not say no to him. I couldn't say no. I got to punch out. If somebody asked you, will you be with me while I die because I don't know how to die? Are you going to say, yeah, I got something to do. Got to do my hair? What are you going to say? So I punched out and went back to the room. And the nurse who was, I gave report to, I let her know that I would be in his room and she didn't have to worry about it. It was almost like doing a one-to-one. She could check in, but I was just going to hang out with him. And she was happy, of course. So he went through the dying phase because he was dying, but he didn't die on my shift. So I sat at his bedside. We were watching television, talking. I was, getting the sweat off and making him comfortable, changing his bed, his gown, because he was just drenched. The way he was sweating, and it was so hard. And, he was a DNR, do not resuscitate. So when he began to really go through the process, it was just something that I did sometimes, things like that, where I might stay at the hospital afterwards. I worked at Grady Hospital. I stayed after, and this is not to make me sound like, oh, I'm nursing Florence Nightingale. I'm just going over things that I remember. And as the AIDS epidemic marched on, I started seeing, I had a young white girl, actually, a young white girl in her 20s. Like, she was like, you would think just really regular. And at that time, anytime a person came in with the AIDS diagnosis, people would automatically assume that they were engaged in, homosexuality was definitely, always, that was the thing that they would point to, or, a IV drug user, or slept with any of those. So she was a church girl too. Like, she was a Christian from the South, and I believe she was a virgin. So it was a real mystery. I remember her parents and just how hard it was on their family. And this girl, like, she showed me pictures of what she looked like, and she looked like one of those beautiful, like, Dallas cheerleaders, like, blonde, beautiful. Now, when I was taking care of her, she was skin and bones. She looked like a refugee who was starving. She was so thin that she had developed that peach fuzz on her skin. And I remember her. And I remember it scared me, in a way, it scared me. I was like, how is this white girl in this hospital dying of AIDS? How did this happen? Because she would always like feel the need to defend herself. She would always tell me, like, Jennifer, I was a virgin. I know you guys think that I was doing, and I was like, no, I wasn't like that. I was like, no, I'm not thinking that. That wasn't even on my mind. I'm taking care of you. I'm not trying to judge you for your lifestyle. But she always had this, like, it was deep. And I watched her die. She didn't die on my shift, but we found out she died. She might not have been in the hospital. But we kept up with different people's stories. She might have been in a hospital near to her town, because some people would come into Atlanta for treatment, and they were from other parts of the state, other parts of the states, even Alabama, because we had the best doctors for this. So I heard that she died. And this is around the time, I could look on the news if it was on in a patient's room, and they were talking about Magic Johnson having AIDS. I think they were saying AIDS, not just HIV. So that was odd. Magic Johnson and all the rumor mill going about him. So it was a lot, you know, when the AIDS epidemic came about. So I watched hospitals just go down the tubes in terms of the cleanliness. If I'm in a nursing station doing my notes, I look under the desk and they don't just have dust bunnies, they got a dust jungle under there. And yeah, it could be Cedars-Sinai world-class hospital in Beverly Hills. Yeah, you got a dust jungle under all of these desks. Nasty and dirty places. I remember I had to push back on Cedars-Sinai because I worked in a part of the hospital they have closed down, but they tried to, because the hospitals have started changing their housekeeping. So they're cutting corners, whereas in most hospitals, it was standard to have housekeeping 24 hours. So they started like contracting out to companies, and you started to see the quality of the cleaning. And I'm not trying to come down on people in housekeeping, like it's not you, it's the system that needs to be exposed. Because I remember when hospitals had housekeeping 24 hours around the clock, and you could call them, they were there, they kept the hospitals cleaner. So now that they're cutting corners and everything, you know, back to the story of Cedars. So, you know, some of the patients might be in these rooms like months. I had a patient at Cedars who was in a hospital bed on life support for like a year or two in the hospital on the pulmonary unit that long. So, you know, sometimes patients are in hospitals for hospital rooms a long time. So if you've had a patient who has been in a hospital room for weeks on end, and the hospital either transfers them out or something, and now they have an open room, and this is the person who was there for months, for a month or so. They wanted to hurry up and turn that room so they could get a new admission. And I don't know what was going on. All these people must have called out. They didn't have enough people. So, you know what, the house supervisor had the nerve to ask me to clean that room, make the bed and clean the room. You already know what I did. No. I'm not opposed to doing work, but I had to explain to her as diplomatically as I could, also being very offended that now nurses are asked to clean rooms. I didn't comply with that. And that's one of the things I don't like about my profession. A lot of nurses will comply with these kind of things. And it makes it hard for somebody like me who comes after you did it, after you cleaned the room and made the bed when the house supervisor asked you. So now they're going to expect me to do that. And I'm not doing that. And I have not done that. So I explained to that house supervisor that under no conditions would I clean that room, because that room needs to be deep cleaned, because fluids from people are all over the walls, the floors in the corner. These rooms are filthy. And I just told her, I am not trained to clean a hospital room. That takes a skill set and training. I haven't been trained on how to clean a hospital room. I could clean a house, a room in a house, but I don't know the proper chemicals they use. I don't know how to clean a hospital room like that. I can clean them up and straighten them out, which I did all the time, but there's no way I was going to do that. But I work in a profession, again, that there are a lot of nurses who would jump and do that because they're scared of losing their job. So I've worked at a hospital where they said, oh yeah, the nurses, the night shift, they pull their own trash. I was like, come again, you what? We pull our own trash. What does that mean, you pull your own trash? That means that after the shift, that hospital wants the nurses to pick up all the trash everywhere and put it in the place receptacle and put new trash bags everywhere. Oh no, nope, not me. I could be a team player. I'm not doing it because it's something that I never had to do stuff like that when hospitals used to be run in a better way. Before you let foreign investments come and buy our hospitals and treat them like big corporations. I think the public needs to know some of these things, and I expect more nurses to start telling these stories. Start writing books, blogs, start a YouTube. This stuff needs to be out in the open in the public. They need to know what's been happening on our watch. I even had a nurse. Wait a minute. I just thought I had a housekeeper here in the South. Now I'm going to get graphic, but somebody had some explosive things coming out of them. It exploded all over the wall in the bathroom. It was everywhere, all on the tub, tiles, everywhere. So when I discovered it, I was like, oh boy. So, I'm getting the patient safe because they're stepping in it and okay. So you get the towels, you get them. So now the bathroom is looking like a crime scene. So I call housekeeping. Isn't that what you do? Well, this little housekeeper, young girl from one of these, I told you that they now have companies that they contract out for. So she was part of one of these companies. She was paged by me. She came up. I told her what happened. You know what she told me? Oh, I'm not going to clean it off. You'll have to get the stuff off of the walls and stuff first, and then I'll come in and clean it. Excuse me? What? I was like, you must be kidding. I am not cleaning poop off of a wall. I'm not doing that. Now I'll do things, but I work hard. I'm not opposed to hard work, but I'm not going to do that. And she had the audacity to say she wasn't going to do it. So that's when I have to go and talk to somebody who could talk some sense into her. And she ended up cleaning that because it's part of your contract. So yeah, healthcare has gone so far down, y'all. So, I've worked with children and teens. Hold on a minute, 1 minute. I'm still here. I just have to do something real quick. Okay, so I've worked with children and teens also. And I've had to advocate for people that are in behavioral health, mental, psychiatric care, things like that. It's a lot of things happening in that genre. I could go on and on about the abuses, the laws that are being broken in psychiatric care. It is very dark area. So I worked at a hospital in Philadelphia, and it was an adolescence unit. And they were poorly staffed a lot. I loved a lot of the people I worked with, really nice people. In fact, one of the nurses, she was like my little sister. She's like my daughter's age. I loved her. She was the one who got me onto making kombucha. It was her. So, I just loved her. So many other people. We had a villain head nurse. She was such a villain. She would make people's lives a living hell. One of these bullies, and she would sabotage you, try to get you fired. She was really wicked. So a lot of people were being abused by this woman. She was in power there for a while. And when you're new at a place, they tell you all the villains. I don't like that. I sometimes I'll appreciate that you're going to warn me about that person, but I'd rather learn a person myself. I don't want to hear all these bad things about what this person did to you. I tend to like those difficult people anyway. I don't know what it is. Like I like to challenge myself to break the ice with difficult people. I don't know. It's just always been something I like to do. I'll make them laugh. Once I got you to laugh, you can't be tough no more. What you gonna do? Who's gonna check me, boo? Once I make you laugh, okay? That's my weapon. So yeah, she was like Nurse Ratched. She embodied Nurse Ratched, and she had a really deep accent, okay? I'm not trying to be mean, but she was from Ireland. And she had this Irish accent. She sounded like an evil leprechaun, I would call her. So they were poorly staffed all the time. They abused staff and all the corners that they cut. So there wasn't enough staff on this one particular weekend. And I heard about it. I heard about this, okay? Now, the grapevine is very active in these hospitals. So I had heard that the charge nurse or something had to go to the bathroom, which that is something you should be able to do and have coverage. But they were so poorly staffed that the charge nurse that was on didn't have time to even think, okay? And having to watch the cameras and keep everybody safe. And they had a girl who was mentally retarded, teenager, who was kept in one of the seclusion rooms because she would always, she wasn't easy to keep in the girl population for various reasons. So they would put her in a special room, and they kind of made a makeshift bedroom for her closer to the station. And so while this nurse had to leave to go to the bathroom, that's very understandable, and tried to get somebody to watch out, but then that person is also working short-staffed. One of the boys from the boy side of the unit, he must have been plotting and casing and learning. Like, they know when you're vulnerable, when you're working in behavioral health. Those units are like basically juvie. They're like juvie. So you have some hardened children. Some of them were born in prison. These are the kind of kids, like, they have crack moms that were in prison, gave birth to them. I mean, real bad stuff they went through. And this teenage boy, he knew that nobody was watching at this particular time period. He went into that area where, mind you, she was younger and she was mentally retarded, or whatever you call developmentally challenged, whatever the PC word, okay? She was a retarded teenage girl, and she required more protection. He went into that room and he did the R word to this child. He was a child too, but an older child. So he R-worded this little girl. And the grapevine was very active. And what I saw was no accountability. No accountability. Guess what I did? Guess what I did? I contacted the newspaper in Philadelphia. Did I not? The guru knows. I contacted a reporter at the Philadelphia, what was it? The Bulletin? No, the Bulletin's been closed. What was it? The Daily News? And he was a correspondent that covered healthcare abuses in the tri-state area. So I called him and I gave him information about what happened at the hospital. Yep. I gave him a tip. You may call me a snitch, whatever you want, but I felt that it was needed because I saw how it was going to be covered up. So a developmentally delayed, yes. Yeah, developmentally delayed, yes. So I let them know what happened. This reporter, this is around the time now, all journalists are not bad. Because this journalist, I don't remember his name, but he was really there for the people knowing, and he was exposing. You remember those kind of journalists? There was one in Atlanta. He was like that consumer whatever reporter. We used to have those kind. They would like, hey, I got you. I see you using child labor. They were like really reporting this stuff. So that's what this particular reporter was like. So he did his investigation. Okay. He didn't just go by a tip. He did investigation and he uncovered what happened and he reported on it, I believe. And guess what? A lot of the higher ranking management people, they got fired. They got fired. Do you think I care? Absolutely not. I care that you are going to cover up an R that happened to a child. You're going to try to find a way to get your little lawyers all in place so you could spin a narrative. No. Not on my watch. Sorry. That girl deserved better. And she deserved justice. Because a lot of these children don't have advocacy. Because their parents are on crack. I watched Philadelphia and the families, especially the Black community. I watched them get destroyed. I worked at MCP Hospital, which was called Women's Medical, while I was in nursing school. So I worked it was Women's Medical on Henry Avenue. And I was the one that would help the nurses. I was called a nurse extern. So I would give the babies their first bath and get them all dressed. And, you know, I knew how to do that because at Chestnut Hill Hospital, I worked on that kind of unit too. I was the one as a nurse, the unit secretary, I would prepare the birth certificate. Oh my God, I was helping out with getting people. Do you see how I have to come clean about this stuff because I was part of this stuff. So I was filling out the birth certificate and putting the baby's little foot stamp and finding out what kind of name they wanted. I'd say, what was that name again? Quartarius? How do you spell Quartarius? Quintavious? How do you want to spell Quintavious? LaQuanisha? How do you spell LaQuanisha? I don't want to get it wrong, okay? Because I'm used to names like Jennifer and Jill and Kyle and Thaddeus. You're going to have to help me, sis. I'm not trying to be bougie, but I don't want to listen. This is a birth certificate or this is a legal document. Now I know it's a slave contract, but I need to get it right so they can put it all in capital letters. And your kid is now going to become a ward of the state off of the ward. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, the names. I could tell you stories on the names. Okay. Oh my God. And the situations, okay? I had a brother come out of the room once. His girlfriend just had a baby, okay? She just had a baby, a whole baby. And I go in to take care of her or whatever. I had to give her crackers and juice, whatever. I would do all that and help out as the unit secretary. And I came out of the room and old boy was following me. And I thought maybe I forgot something. I was like, hey, how can I help you? And he was like, can I get your number? And I was like, what? Yeah, can I get your number? Like, can I get to know you? Get to know me? I'm confused. He was like, oh, her? Oh, me and her, we don't see eye to eye. That's just my baby's mom. I was like, bro, that ain't how it's gonna go. Like it's never gonna go like that, okay? I remember these things. It's so weird how I remember these things, right? So anyway, I work at MCP. And this was around the crack era too, when I was a nursing extern. So I'm going back and forth through the timeline here. I remember the crack babies, as they called them back then, or they called them border babies, because they would have crack addicted women and girls, because I had a patient who was 12 years old who gave birth to a baby. I think she was 12 or 13. It was unbelievable. But some of these mothers would give birth and they would slip out the back staircase to head back to the crack house. And it was normal for us to have to call the Philadelphia Police Department to go find a mother in a crack house and get her back to the hospital to take care of her baby. Sometimes they couldn't find the mothers. It was, whatever. And some babies were left at the hospital. And they would be called border babies. Border babies. There's probably something to decode in that. Border babies. So these border babies would be in the nursery for a long time. We would end up falling in love with them. I'll never forget one of them. We loved her so much. I would take, I had the official camera, so I was always taking pictures of her development, and we would buy her clothes and stuff. And I would always dress her up because I was the one that did their hair. I was the one, blame me if your baby has a curl at the top of their head. I would take all their little hair, put some lotion, and I would give them a little curl at the top and take their picture. So she was one of the border babies. So I watched the process of how she became, I guess, a foster baby. And one of the people at the hospital, I think, fostered her and probably wanted to adopt her. But she was really so cute and sweet. So we watched her develop. She went through the period, the crack addicted babies. That alone, okay, nurses who went through the crack era, we need to speak about some things, because I'm telling you, The courts of the Lord need to be petitioned, and the international courts need to be petitioned because of the genocide and the crimes against humanity that has been done through healthcare. We need to speak up. So these babies, these crack babies, as they became labeled crack babies, they didn't like to be touched and handled and held and rocked, because their skin, their nerve endings were like fire. So if you rock a baby who's not addicted, that's soothing. But to a crack addicted baby, if you're trying to soothe them, it hurts them. They hurt everywhere. These babies, they are going through detoxing. And the most that we could do is to swaddle them. I learned how to swaddle babies. It was like an art form. We used to compete. Who was the best swaddler? You know, so I learned how to really tuck those little babies in. And we had rooms that were in the nursing station where we would have to put them in the room, because they weren't the kind of babies who their mothers could have them in the rooms, right? So we would push them in the dark room. It had to be a dark room. So you swaddle them, put them in the room, and leave them alone, because you would check on them, of course, but they didn't want a lot of handling. You know, we feed them and whatever. Then you had the babies who were the fetal alcohol syndrome babies. And I'll never forget this one baby. He was a fetal alcohol syndrome baby. When I gave him his first bath, that baby held on to my hands. He was just born. He held on to both of my hands, and he stood up and he let a scream out. It sounded like a rebel yell. It was scary. I had witnesses, though. The other nurses were there, so they saw what happened. Nobody would have believed that this baby stood on his feet as a newborn, held my hands, and he screamed. He let out a scream that was so visceral. He was in so much pain. I could go on, you know, but that's the crack epidemic. So you have the crack epidemic coinciding with the AIDS epidemic. So when I worked out also back in California, I am super sensitive to keeping people's information private, right? I wouldn't talk about like celebrity patients and stuff like that. But I got to see celebrities at their lowest point. Because I worked not only at Cedars, but I worked at a hospital in Pasadena that was like, this hospital had been around in the old days of like the old Hollywood, and a lot of those Hollywood stars would come there because it was this beautiful hospital with the grounds that were, it was like a arboretum, like a garden, beautiful. And they had redwood trees transferred down to LA that were growing on this property. And you had pharmaceutical company heirs living at this hospital. So this is the hospital where Hollywood elite back in old Hollywood would come after they had their nervous breakdown, as they called it. And they had cottages. One part of the hospital had cottages where people lived in the cottages. Like one guy, he was a pharmaceutical heir, and he had his own cottage. He had his own dog. he had all this memorabilia when you would go give him his medicine, because we'd have to go to their little houses and give them their medicine if you worked in that part that day. So whenever I worked that section, it was always interesting. So whenever I would go take his medicine, I would go into his house, and he really loved the Wizard of Oz. I think he had some kind of connection. So he had all this memorabilia, like it was stuff that it would be worth a lot of money. He had all this Wizard of Oz stuff everywhere. And he was really wealthy. And a lot of them were on trust funds. Like maybe their family didn't want them to be around because they had, they had mentals going on. So they would set up a trust for them that they could live the rest of their life at this hospital. Can you imagine that? So I had patients like that. And this one patient, if you were lucky enough, he would take a trip to Europe every year, and he would take a nurse with him. So maybe it was, I don't know, interesting stuff, but I never did that. But other people did. It was very fascinating. One guy, he had been on a work crew out in LA on the, Caltrans, and he was the foreman or something like that. And a truck had come through, like his work crew was out there working, and some either a car or a truck came through and unalived his whole crew. He was the only, I think, sole survivor of this accident. And you can imagine all the issues. He was so sweet. But, he lived, it was just so amazing, the people. And he loved us so much. We got to know him. And if he knew you were the nurse on, he would send his driver in the limousine. He would send his driver just to get you a Starbucks. If you were one of his favorite nurses, or I think he did it for everybody, he would start your shift off and he would have his driver. Can you imagine? I would, like, if I was working, it was like a little house, the nursing station, and his driver would come by and knock on the door and say, so-and-so wanted me to bring you this, a Starbucks. He would remember what you liked. So he would do that. It was just so neat. And like I said, I got to see people. They had a special fund if you worked in the film industry. So a lot of people that were addicted to heroin and stuff, cameramen, things like that, they had a fund, a special fund or something. So their part of their healthcare was detoxing, and watching people detox from heroin is something that is unreal, especially if you work at night and you watch a person detox from heroin. So it was a lot of heroin detoxing out there in LA, and lots of weird things like, I had a patient who, she was a beautiful redhead, and she happened to go to a nightclub or bar by herself. And I tell all young women, do not go places by yourself. This is not the time to take chances. It wasn't the time to take chances when I would hang out. I always usually I went with friends, family, but this woman happened to be by herself and went to a bar. Well, there was a man who was working for a ring of men. These are men that wear suits, okay? They are elite men. So he was a shopper. He would shop for these men. She was by herself at the bar, beautiful redhead. So redheads were on the menu that night. So they were hunting for redheads. And this was her unlucky day. So she told me like how this young man approached her, and he was real handsome. He was young, like around her age. And she was The Hunted. And this guy, young guy who approached her, they buy you a drink, they're getting some chit chat in. He said, why don't you go with me? I'm going to hang out with some friends, a party. That is always a red flag. Like they say, you never, I used to watch 30 Rock, and I remember when I used to like Alec Baldwin. His character, Jack, said one day, you never follow a hippie to a second location. And me and my daughter, we laugh at that. We used to love 30 Rock. But you never go to a place, a bar or club by yourself as a woman, but you definitely don't leave to go to a second location. And that's for men and women, because I've had incidents where I've taken care of men that came into Atlanta for business and met some people on the plane or met some people at a bar because they're staying at a hotel downtown. And they meet some people they think are nice, some locals. Come party with us. And you wind up in the MARTA station naked, crawling on your hands and knees, not knowing what planet you're on. Yeah, I've had that happen. Never forget that either. I had to look at this brother and say, are you crazy? You never had a grandmom teach you that you never, my grandmom taught me this. You don't get a drink. If you're at a club, you never order open drinks. You order, and my grandmother was like, I don't want to hear it. Don't try to tell me you don't drink. She said, if you do, you never have a drink and you leave it and walk away like, like a ditz, a airhead. You always get a closed drink like a beer. This is the day you're going to drink beer, okay? At your little whatever shindig you're at. Even if you don't like beer and you feel like, hey, I got a drink. You do not have an open drink. You have something that you keep your eye on. These were the things that the older generation would teach you. And I've watched people just in so many trick bags wind up in the hospital. I could tell you many stories about it. But I had to look at that brother like, you got to be kidding. You did not fall for the okie doke. But that's from not having intact families. You need to have an older generation that has wisdom. You need to have law and order in your families, which spills out to law and order in your society. It starts at home. So people are not learning wise lessons. So this redhead goes with this young man, and he pulls some, tricky stuff like, oh, I got to go here and stop here, and ended up taking her to some deserted looking place with buildings, like, you know what I'm saying? Like a corporate complex of some sort after hours. Took her, asked her to get out of the car, and she's trusting, gets out of the car, winds up in some big warehouse type of deal. And she said it was a bunch of men in suits, a bunch of them, waiting for what they ordered. And they basically afterwards left her, whatever condition. She lived through it. But I had a lot of things like that. I had strippers that worked in Hollywood, because see, Cedars-Sinai corners Beverly Hills, Hollywood, and greater Los Angeles. So you're going to get like Hollywood types of activity from the clubs on Sunset Strip. You're going to have the typical stuff. And I would take care of strippers and things like that, hookers. that got beat up or something went wrong. Lots of crazy stories, you know. But I was very careful about the anonymity, you know, keeping the HIPAA thing, you know, not giving names and things like that. But I've taken assignments where I worked in St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and they have one hospital on the island of St. Croix called Governor Juan Louis. That hospital is something else. Whoa. Whoa, I could tell you stories. So the culture on the islands, I'll say, is different. I witness people, because it's just like living in a small town, and say somebody comes in, because AIDS, HIV was really high down there, and it was married women that were contracting HIV down there. It was really strange. A lot of high incidence of married women. So you'd have a patient come in with one of those diagnoses, and I would witness people that work at the hospital get on the phone and start calling people to tell people that so-and-so, guess what? You know, with their accent, guess what, Miss Son? You're not going to believe who's in here with the HIV AIDS. And I'm like, oh, wait, time out. What? What are you doing? You know, I'm the American girl who's worked in LA, and I'm like, listen, I worked at hospitals that TMZ used to come in under all kinds of disguises. We had a board in the front of one of the hospitals, and the one in Pasadena. We had pictures of various reporters from TMZ, allegedly, in places where they had done things to get in so they could get a story on somebody. You know, sometimes I would look out the window if I was somewhere where it was a window and it was the parking deck, I would look out the window maybe and see photographers with, I never saw lenses so long. They're camped out in the parking structure, pointed in the windows of Cedars-Sinai, trying to find out something, trying to get a picture of somebody in their worst state. So I was pretty paranoid about being very, very careful with observing HIPAA and not violating it. And to see people down in the U.S. Virgin Islands hospital employees getting on the phone and giving whole names because they know each other. It's a small place, and they're telling the whole, look, you got AIDS, came in with this. It's a cultural thing, though. These are some of the things what am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to tell these people not to do that. That's their culture. That's how they get down. And a lot of that happens in the South here too. They're very relaxed and loose with HIPAA information. And they pretty much blew up HIPAA in 2020 with the pandemic, because that's going to be something that I would love to hear a legal eagle talk about, all the HIPAA violations that happened in 2020 with people demanding that you tell them your health status, people demanding all kinds of things of you that should be your own private medical information. So the medical industry talks out of both sides of their mouth. They have HIPAA going on all these years, and they threaten you with, what is it, $250,000 fine, up to 5 years in prison or 3 years in prison. I mean, HIPAA violations they're nothing to play with. You know what happened when Britney Spears was admitted to Cedars-Sinai, and the nurses that went into her chart to find out things, and other celebrities, it's nothing to play with. But I don't know how they can enforce HIPAA after what they did from 2020. Help me understand. So I wasn't afraid of COVID patients. It was like the AIDS patients, same scenario. I wasn't scared of them. I was called to go to their little makeshift COVID unit when COVID hit. And I remember the lies and the gaslighting that went on. They would lie to us and say, oh, one of those patients is going to go to our, like, we made a makeshift unit, and that unit is going to take the first patients. And then they lied, and then they ended up putting a COVID patient in one of our negative pressure rooms and not letting us know that they were admitting the patient. So it was kind of like you're thrusted right into it before you could get your head together. Maybe you may want to research or read some articles about what was happening. They didn't give, they give you no respect. So I was told that I would be the first nurse on our unit to go over to the COVID unit. And I remember one of the nurses, because they were going down the line, and my name is later in the alphabet, my legal birth name. So they were going to do it that way to kind of try to make it fair. So I wasn't going to be one of the first people. So one of the first people, you know what she pulled? She was like, oh, I have a grandchild. I can't go and work over there. My grandchild lives with me. So, okay, you pulled that, sis. I don't have no hard feelings, even though I would help you start IVs all the time. You got me, girl. I'm laughing. I'm not mad at you if you're watching. So you pulled that little stunt. You didn't have to go over to the COVID unit for the first time. So I went over, okay? I wasn't scared. And this is when they had it, the whole vibe was like one of those Will Smith movies. It was like a weird time. And I went over, and I'm going to tell you, my very first encounter with a COVID patient, my first COVID patient was like a zombie. It was something so weird going on with him. I don't know what it was, but he was like a zombie. I can't explain it any other way. It was a weird thing. But I went ahead and did that. And then I went up to New York City, and I stayed up there a few months, lived up there. Josephine came with me, and lived in a hotel. The city was shut down. And, back to the New York thing, I was wondering, where are my real New Yorkers? Because, well, the New Yorkers I worked with, they went right along with the narrative. I was the nurse that wasn't wearing masks. And I've lost a lot of friends and, acquaintances because I refused to wear a mask the whole time. I was the nurse working my 12-hour shifts without a mask on. Some of these Jawns had 2 and 3 masks on. One of them, I tried to give her a report. This wasn't up in New York, but it was in Georgia. This chick, young nurse, okay? I'm giving her a report because I'm night shift. She's coming on. And she's acting real jittery, like, she's acting real weird. And I was wondering, her energy was just weird. And I'm ready to give you a report so I get out of here. And she said, now she's got 2 masks on. Aren't you going to put a mask on? And I looked at her like, no. She was not from our unit, so she didn't know how I rolled. I wasn't wearing no mask for 12 hours. I'll play along and wear it when I go into a COVID patient room. But if I'm working the 12 hours and I'm out in the hallway sitting at my desk doing charting, I'm not wearing 2 masks for 12 hours. And I didn't do it. That's why I don't have a job today. So I refused to do it, and I stood alone. I stood alone, as I have a lot. I stood alone. And I feel some kind of way. If I went on a hospital unit now, a lot of my nursing friends, yeah, look at that. If I went into the hospital, I'd come in like this. Look, I'd be like, what's up? What's up? Nothing. This is the only way I'd be able to get through nursing, right here. Lady Di said, what is that? This Lady Di is Jenny's little helper. You know, they talked about a Delta strain. This is a Delta variant that helps me to deal with all of the fake and phonies, probably, this fake and phony system. This has been very helpful for my PTSD. I like it. I would walk on the unit, though, with it if I were to see what my old nursing friends were up to. I see you looking at my stories. You suddenly start, what's up? What's up? I come up and go, what's up? How'd it work out? How'd it work out to be a coward and not stand up? How'd that work out for you? How'd that work out? You didn't support me. You didn't check on me. Y'all let me stand alone. That's okay. It's okay. I don't have any hard feelings. I understand you were scared. You were just following orders. I've done that before too. I probably should have fought against doctors that were writing protocols like morphine drips. I didn't know at the time. I was young too. Morphine drips. Does anybody know what a morphine drip does? When you have to titrate it according to the doctor's orders, the palliative care orders. So I remember when, during the pandemic, I remember when they stopped allowing people's families to be in the room. Now that made me very mad. That made me very mad because I'm a real advocate. You have to have an advocate when you're in the hospital. You have to. Remember I told you about my grandmother? She never wanted anybody to let her lay up in a hospital bed looking like buckwheat. Her children were expected to bring her good gowns. Yes, my grandmother didn't wear hospital gowns all of her hospital stays. She brought her beautiful silky satin. Even though she was a sick woman, she wore beautiful gowns and she'd have robes. She was a regal woman in spite of being injured by a vaccine. She always put her best forward. She'd have her little makeup and lipstick on. And her daughters were always there at the hospital advocating, my mom and her sisters. my mom especially. And her hair was always done, even though she's on that cotton pillowcase. You know, Black girls, we need to have satin pillowcases, you know? And she's laying on that cotton, but she always looked good. And we would grease her scalp. It was called greasing your scalp. Does anybody know what greasing your scalp is? Because of all the sicknesses and the way my grandmother's body was broken down, her scalp was filled with psoriasis. So she had special ointments. I knew all of her ointments and what different, so she had plaques all over her skin. And we did the best skincare for her. You know, I would, as a little girl, rub her skin and I would grease her scalp. You know, I would part it and put her salves and her things in her scalp, and I'd massage her scalp. She was my Mimi. She was my Mimi. And in spite of the way that I was programmed to not like her, and that's something that happens in divorces, my father programmed me not to like her. So when I got back from Cuba, I didn't like my grandmother, and she scared me even more because she was crippled and I didn't know what to do with that. So I didn't like her. But as I started to, she loved me so much, and she won me over. And I loved her so much. She was a tough woman, but sometimes things would happen to her skin because she was slow to heal, and she would have big wounds sometimes. And I learned how to do wound care so we could save her from having to go through an amputation. So I learned wound care, and I would know all of the bandages to put on her. And we kept her skin impeccable. So I want to say that when they stopped families from coming in, I remember one of the unit secretaries, you know, she got the word to, you know, go and you got to get out. You got to get out. And these people enjoy barking these kind of things. You know, people that you work with that if something changes, especially they're taking away something, some people love to be the cheerleader for that, right? So she was enjoying it too much, telling people, your family's got to leave. No more visiting, no more visiting, no more visiting. No visitors, no visitors, right? I don't like people like that enjoy telling, and they want to run down and find the visitors that are hiding and tell them to get out. If you don't get out, I'm calling security, right? So I watched how there were no visitors anymore. There was a woman who had come up, older woman, and they had started her IV. I think she had a port or something. So she had a port, which is IV access that is surgically put in if you need medicines, IV medicines or fluids often. Instead of poking you all over and you become a pincushion, they will put a port in, you know, in your chest wall. So she had a port, and they had accessed it, I believe, in the ER, and they put the dressing on it. So they used the dressing that is the clear tape or something. She was allergic to this particular product, and it was known, I guess, you know, her family would have known it. So by the time, because some people don't come straight onto the floor, by the time she came up, she was my patient, her chest had developed an infection. And you could see that it was on its way to becoming like where her layers of skin tissue would be infected. And I was talking to her and she explained that she's allergic to certain tapes and things like that, because it comes down to even tape, gloves, all of these things. They have these toxic products that they have in hospitals. Sometimes something as simple as the kind of tape that they put on a person's skin can cause a raging infection. And if the person is compromised, say they are a diabetic, I don't have to tell you that it takes no time for a diabetic to develop a raging infection that can turn into very dangerous things. So this woman now has an infection around this port, and it's in her chest. She's already thin. Do you see where I'm going? Who would want to have an infection on their chest, where your heart is? But if she had advocacy, her family with her, maybe that might not have happened in the first place. That's why I spoke up a lot about what they were doing with the families not being there. And people so by themselves alone in these rooms. When I was in New York, I remember a woman, because I listened to a song earlier and I thought about her. You know how music is like the soundtrack to your life. So I'm working on Long Island. And so this patient, she was one of those, like, you know, she was like a Jewish lady, you know, Long Island. And she was really difficult though. She was like everything. If you were doing central casting for like a Jewish woman from Long Island, she was fun though, right? So she was really difficult. Everybody was like over her because she was having, you could tell she was going through some emotional stuff, and you can't have your family with you by herself. And she was just, you know, not happy, not a happy, sunshiny person to be around, right? So everybody was like avoiding her. And when you're not a nice person in a hospital, it's not a good idea. It's just like you don't want to make a person who's cooking or serving your food mad. Well, you don't want to piss off people who are going to wipe your butt, help you to the bathroom, bring snacks, bring food, bring pain medicine to you. You don't want to piss those people off, okay? But again, going back to, I like challenging people. Okay, it's something I've always liked. It might be a Libra thing. Let me know if it's a Libra thing. So I wasn't scared of her because let me tell you, Mama, my stepmother, my first stepmother is Jewish. Okay, yeah. I went to synagogue, Sabbath school. I practiced Judeo-Christianity, messianic Christianity, you know? So I had a Christmas tree and the menorah. My daughter, whoa. Oh boy. Yeah, that was me too. I'm doing both Jewish and Christian holidays, okay? So I have a Jewish mom, okay? So yeah. I know little idiosyncrasies. I grew up in Mount Airy, Philadelphia. Okay. I even went to Jewish camps in the Poconos. Can you imagine? I went to Jewish camps in the Poconos and we were singing all little Jewish camp songs. Me and my cousin Jill were the only two. We were the only Negrescents at the Jewish camp in the Poconos. Yeah, that was us. And my cousin Jill's name, okay, are you ready? My cousin Jill is named Jill Irving. So can you imagine a black girl in Philadelphia with a name like Jill Irving? So yeah, Jill Irving and we were at Jewish camp. Yeah. So don't come at me. Listen, don't come for me unless I sin for you, because a lot of you assume a lot about me because you look at me and you assume things. I work with a lot of Jewish doctors and stuff, and I've had Jewish patients. I worked at Cedars-Sinai, okay? Like, come on, man. And so sometimes, people want to just talk to you and assume things, right? I've had to get with a few of my Jewish brethren about this. I had a Jewish doctor patient. Can you imagine? He was a patient of mine, and he had an infected, like, damn, you guys are messing up these IVs. He had like an infected IV or something, so it wasn't anything big. So he was just getting IV antibiotics and that kind of stuff. So I had come into his room, and he sees me. I'm negressence coming in, and this was around the time that Obama was in office, and he was like, oh, wow, Obama, worship, 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 just coming out of his mouth, right? Now, listen, I'm nice. I'm taking care of all his IVs, and he's trying to make small talk with me about Obama worship. And it was it was insulting at a certain point. He was just going too far with it. And you know what? I said, he's probably going to report me, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I took the time to educate him, doctor that you are. And I said, I didn't vote for Obama. And he looked at me like, I said, yeah, I don't support Obama, and I do not worship him, and I do not like him. And I think he's doing a horrible job. And I went through whatever points I had, and he was so offended. And I walked out that room, and I said, he's probably going to ask for another nurse. He's probably going to report me. But I didn't care, because don't assume because I'm Black that you know me. A lot of times now I'm going to talk to my Jewish brethren and sisterin right now, because we're going to have to come to the table and break some matzah. Because let me see it. Let me just say it this way. Everybody can get that smoke. Everybody can get that smoke. You are not a special class of people that you can't get that smoke. Okay? A lot of times you all would assume a lot of things. I've supported Israel. I've sent money to Israel. I've taken care of the Ethiopian Jewish people, healthcare for the Ethiopian Jewish people that get treated like dogs in Israel, by the way. I had a Jewish, when I lived in LA, we're going to do this now. When I lived in LA, I knit and crochet, right? So when you knit and crochet, this is how me and my daughter, we laugh about, we're like, okay, crocheters, we're like the peasants, right? Crocheters are the peasants, but the knitters are they're the cabal. They're the Illuminati of the fiber world, okay? Because when we go into like little fancy knitting boutiques all around, everybody's real bougie and stuck up. You go to Michael's where you buy your crochet stuff. It's made with, what is it? Polyester, the twins. But when you go in these fancy knitting boutiques, they have, these are alpacas, baby alpacas with silk mixed with it. Was woven by a Mongolian virgin in the hills of Nepal. They're real bougie. Okay. And the yarn costs $100, $1 million. So I used to knit all up and down Southern California. Yes. Why haven't I written a book? Okay, so I was part of the Knitterollies. So the Knitterollies of Los Angeles, right? So I would knit in Studio City at a knitting boutique. Julia Roberts knit there, but she wouldn't knit with me. She shut that knitting store down whenever she would knit there. Julia Roberts, allegedly. That's what I heard you did. So I would go there and knit with them. And some of these knitting store owners, they're like notoriously villainous. Like they're like villains from Central Casting. I don't know what it is about knitting, like the bougie Knitterolli boutiques of Southern California. So I knit with the best of them, baby. I knit with the Knitterollies. Yes, I did. I came and busted it up and brought negrescence to it. Because guess what? I knit and crochet. So I do the peasant crocheting and I do the bougie knitting. And I could get just as bougie as the most bougie of them. Yes, I can. So yes, this is a subject I didn't think I was going to get into. Let's do it, right? It must be the 420. If the 420 wants me to tell this story. Okay, so listen, ready? So I'm going to talk about the Knitterolli. Why not? So we did, they're called yarn crawls. So whenever me and my daughter would go traveling, it's one of our mommy daughter bonding. We're nerds, okay? So we're like, okay, so when we touch down, we're going to look up we had already looked up all the knitting boutiques of wherever. If we're in Cairo, we want to know where the Knitterolli are all around the world, baby. We knit in Ethiopia, right outside the palace of the emperor and his empress. We're knitting in Ethiopia. We're knitting 30,000 feet up. We're knitting in Starbucks in Beverly Hills. We're knitting everywhere, baby. So, yeah. There was this one chick up in Thousand Oaks, right? She has a boutique, knitting boutique. I hope I don't say too much that I'm banned. So let me tell you, she was like some kind of German. She was a German, and she had a German name. And she was really like stern, okay? But real nice. I told you I like difficult people. So I broke through to the Knitterolli villains. I either made you laugh or I bought a whole hell of a lot of your bougie yarn. You better act nice to me. I just spent $400 in your boutique. You better kiss my butt right now. So okay, whatever it was, I got along with the Knitterolli villains from Laguna Niguel. I went to a boutique. I used to knit at a boutique in Laguna Niguel. Oh, we went, baby. Let me tell you, we went all up and down Cali, underground Knitterollis. So in Thousand Oaks, it was okay. It was a war going on between. Now, this was before my time. It was a big yarn shop, they told me. When you enter something, you're the new person. So all these Jewish women are telling me the history. And they don't know I'm like a yenta too, baby. I'm a brown yenta. I got a Jewish mom. I'm technically Jewish, okay? So they didn't know how to take me, okay? Because I didn't come right off and let them know my Jewish background stuff, because I want to see how you're going to treat me. I want to see how you're going to treat me, how you treat negrescents. So I'm not going to come right out with my background, okay? My paperwork. So, they're going to try to hit me with some Hebrew. What? You don't think I know some Hebrew? You don't think I know Hebrew and sing those Hebrew songs at the holidays? Okay, so you just trickle it out on them and they'd be like, oh, how's she know all that? That's okay. I be having fun with the Nitaralis. So this one lady, this one yarn store, they had a war and it splintered. So it was I can't even get it. It was two yarn factions in Thousand Oaks. Two yarn factions at war. So you had to choose sides. You had to choose sides in this fiber war. So everybody, by the time I entered into the Southern California Nitarali, the dust had settled. Everybody had chosen their sides, okay? So I was, you know me, I happened to mix, I had quantum entanglements. I didn't even know. I would go to one yarn boutique and that was part of the other like faction over there. And then I go to the other yarn store and that's on the other side. I didn't know. And I stepped on a few, you have to know the code of the group that you're in. And you know how women are. We do warfare more Machiavellian, right? So you have to know the nuances of women and women groups. And I like to be the negrescence that's mixed in. I learn a lot. I gather intelligence. So I had to learn that I was doing stuff outside of the codes, right? But then I told these chicks, look, I go to Helga's shop. I don't care if you don't like her. Because, when you go to the boutiques, you sit. You don't just go and buy yarn and get in and out like Michael's. That's what the peasants do. You go and you bring your project that you're working on with your bougie fibers, and you learn how to read knitting. It's another language. I learned it. Me and my daughter, we're fluent in Nitarali languages, knitting and crocheting. So I had to let them know, because you sit with these women for hours and you begin to bond with them and you live in the same community. I lived in Thousand Oaks. So you're my neighbors. I'm not going to just take sides in your Nitarali war. I like all of you chicks. Okay. Is that okay? So if you hear that I'm over there sitting with them, listen, don't come for me unless I send for you. And you're not going to tell me who I can have friends with. I've never been that kind of person. I don't allow my friends to tell me who I can be friends with. Are you that kind of person? Or do you go and listen to the friend who doesn't like her and you're not supposed to like her? What? Get out of here with that. So I knit with all of them. And, one of them, oh, by the way, oh my God, these little old Jewish women were, because sometimes you might not see them for a little while. They had gotten into reading 50 Shades of Grey. Now, you want to be uncomfortable sitting among older women, because I was brought up to really, give a lot of respect to my elders. So these are women that are like in their 70s and 80s, some of them. They take good care of themselves. So they're talking about reading this book. They were all talking and whispering. And I was like, what is 50 Shades of Grey? And they started telling me about, and I was like, I can't believe what you are. And then one of the little old ladies, she was so innocent, she was reading it too. I wanted to stand up and just say, give me these books. And who started this? I didn't want them reading that 50 Shades of Grey, but they were, and they were always talking about it. It was so cringy. But anyway, you get to know them. One of them, she had cancer. She died. And she didn't have to work. She just wanted to help out. And she became friends with the owner, she was a rich lady. She was a Gentile married to a Jewish guy. Yeah. So she was a Gentile. What do they call them? Shiksas. So she was a pretty shiksa. And, she had a big old crib and everything, living nice, but she wanted to have a knitting boutique because, she didn't want to be bored. So her husband got her a knitting boutique. She didn't have to sell any yarn. She wasn't selling any of it. It was a hangout spot. And she had it decorated like it looked like you had walked into someone's home. Okay. So she had cookies all the time and teas and little finger sandwiches. So when I went there, I would have to get my, I'm with the bougies and they play mahjong. They get together and they play mahjong, right? These are the gals that are like the wine moms, okay? You go over to their house and they have wine refrigerators. They're wine moms, okay? I could tell you about the wine moms. They're something. So, they're wine momming it up. And what else are they? They divorce well this is some of the lingo. You have to divorce well. You married well, but you got to divorce well too. And these chicks divorce well. Okay. They're set. Mahjong. There you go. They play that all the time. That's a big thing. Yeah. So with the Knitterali's up in Thousand Oaks and whatnot. So I one time, I think one of them wasn't feeling well. And I said, I'm going to make you some matzo ball soup. And everybody stops knitting like, what did you say? I said, matzo ball soup. She's not feeling well. I'm going to make her a pot of it. They started acting weird. Like, how does she know how to make matzo ball soup? And I was like, because my mother used to make it for me when I didn't feel well. It was like, okay, so I'm going to start trickling out my paperwork. So I made her a pot of matzo ball soup. And mine is made with loving intentions that it will heal you and make you look like Marilyn Monroe in her 20s. Okay. So when I brought that soup in, and she had that soup, made with a little negrescence sprinkled in, little negrescence. She came back and told me that was the best matzo soup in her whole family. And she said it in front of all of the Knitterali's so they could hear it. And it was like my little secret vindication. I was knitting. She was bragging about my matzo ball soup. And, you have to be humble. And I was knitting, like I was eating it up. She was going just she was getting on their nerves, bragging about my matzo ball soup. It was great. It was a great moment. So I learned how to make matzo ball soup by the best. Okay, I have a Jewish friend in Atlanta who went to the Cordon Bleu. She's even shown me some of her tips to get very fluffy matzo balls. Yes. So, yeah. One of the ladies, you know what she said one day? And this is why this is between us, okay? My Jewish brethren and sisterin. We're going to have some conversations, I feel, coming up soon. We're going to have to sit at the table in the wilderness and sort some things out, okay? So one of the women who lived in Israel at one time, and she moved to LA. Her husband, they were into the optical business, like they had business, like they were loaded. So, you know, because I always heard about their children's weddings and, you know, big weddings, like amazing weddings, okay? And one of them, the one that lived in Israel, she had really deep, thick accent. I was talking about, I was going to Ethiopia. I was headed to Ethiopia. As a nurse, I've done nursing in Ethiopia. Shout out to my Ethiopian doctor and nurse friends. I have lots of Ethiopian doctor and nurse friends in Addis Ababa. Shout out to you all, my family. And so I was headed to my first trip to Ethiopia. I was excited. And, you know, they were asking me questions, and I was talking about the Ethiopian Jews because those were the people I was going to help, clinics for them. And this woman proceeds to tell me how in Israel, when the Ethiopian refugees come, they are so, how does she say it? They're so uncivilized that they have to teach them hygiene and all kinds of things, how to be human in their society, basically. And she said that I'm the only negressant. I'm the only negressance in this. Why did I put myself in? She said this, and I don't know what I know would stop me. I set her straight about some things. Actually, this might have been my second time. I think it was my second time to Ethiopia because I had already been. So I was speaking from personal experience. And I set her straight in a way that a Libra does it, very reserved. I used my words, and I let her know that she better not ever in her life say these things about Ethiopians ever in front of me. First, that was the first thing I established with her. And I basically proceeded to educate her on how she was very ignorant of Ethiopian Jews. And she didn't like it. So we fell out over that. We were good, even though she had like a harsh kind of edge to her. You know, I just chalked it up to that's who she is. But we fell out over that. And when I started to become very vocal in the pro-life movement, I fell out with a lot of the Nidarali over that because they're extremely liberal. And it just, it shows me the education process of all that I've been through. When I think about that, and funny things too, like I knit a gown, okay, a whole gown. And this gown took me 4 months. No, I crocheted it. That's what it was. Because you know what? I wanted to show that crochet is very high level fiber art. And people shouldn't look down on crocheting. So I chose this very beautiful gown that was designed by a Black woman in the islands, believe it or not. She sold her pattern to a really expensive, one of these bougie pattern places. And these women didn't know that the pattern's author was a Black woman. And I only learned it because I always research things. And I was doing all this research on the pattern because I was part of this community online called Ravelry. If you know about Ravelry, you'll know that that's one of the Knitterali sites. So I was on Ravelry and I found this pattern, but I went into, I wanted to see who authored the pattern, because a lot of people will author patterns and they may go and visit other boutiques and come around and do I guess a book signing, a pattern signing or something. This world is an interesting world, okay? But so I accidentally found out it was a Black woman who authored this really high level art pattern, designed it. She's a crochet master, okay? So that was amazing. I sent her a Facebook friend request and she accepted it. So we're friends to this day. And I created her I used the same color basically that she used. And I created this gown, crocheted it. It took me 4 months. And the Knitterali, before, when I was about to start the project, I started this project out of the boutique in Laguna Niguel. Okay, this is Orange County. So I told them, I'm going to do this. I want to challenge myself. I'm crazy like that. And they were like, yeah, they know. They're like, you are crazy like that, Jennifer. So they were trying to talk me out of it. Oh my God, you'll never, how they are. You'll never finish that. Oh my God. And they'll tell you all these horror stories about how they started a project and it's been in their closet for 10 years. And you're like, look, Edith, I don't care what you did. I'm going to finish it. And now that you have shown me that you are doubting me, that's the wrong thing to do to a Libra. So I finished it in 4 months and I pissed them off, I'm sure. Because you got the haters that are in the Knitterali. So while I was working on the gown, I remember there were donuts that were in the middle. And these were if you know LA, one thing they do is they have some good donut places. You could become addicted to donuts in Los Angeles. So they had some of these good donuts in the middle, in the table. Everybody's knitting, doing their thing, doing whatever. I'm crocheting. That's right. Power to the people. I'm crocheting. Y'all knit. So I went and reached for a donut, and one of the little older Jewish women, she looked up, she did one of them side eyes. She said, oh, I wouldn't eat that donut if you want to fit in that dress. It was so shady, okay? But this is what I live for, shade like that, okay? You got to be good with it, because that's how my grandmother and my aunts are like that, It's that subtle shade. And she didn't say it in a mean way. She just said, I wouldn't grab that donut, and you want to get in the dress, don't you? And you know what I did? I left that donut Right there, okay? I did not, Pauletta. I did not eat that donut. Because she came across with that authority, you know, the older women in your family, like your mother. Like when I would go out looking crazy in my eclectic clothes, my mother would just ask me, "You're going out in that?" And I'm ready to hit the door. And she asked, "Oh, so is that what you're wearing?" And yeah, that's what I'm wearing. Is it something wrong with my kimono afro combination? Is there something wrong? Because I was the black sheep of the family. I don't care about all that stuff. I'm not going to wear a girdle, Grandma Stormy. I'm not going to wear a girdle at 16, Grandma Stormy. I didn't fit in with. How did I wind up in my family? Is what I want to know. I don't know. I'm not like them. This is weird. So yeah. What else is going on? The knitterali, I got into a little bit of the oh, when I finished that gown, by the way, that gown is a masterpiece. I wore the gown. This is the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade and all of the babies that have been genocided. Because I was working in the pro-life movement, somebody approached me and they were going to do this solemn ceremony up in Thousand Oaks. And they wanted me to speak at this event. I was asked to speak because of the stuff they noticed that I was doing. At the time, I was working on a documentary. So I wore that gown and I spoke and gave my testimony about having had an abortion when I was in college. And I went into the scripture because that gown I dedicated to, you know, my child. It was like, you know, hard to describe. It was like for that moment. Because I have gone through Rachel's Vineyard and I have been released. I released myself of the trauma, the guilt, the condemnation of it. And I always encourage and I share my testimony for you all. But I spoke about every stitch was a prayer. Now that's 4 months of prayer. And I had just come back from the brink of almost dying myself. I had been a nurse 1 minute, and then I was a patient all during my shift. I literally hit the wall and slid down one day at work and became a patient. Later to find out that I had a blood, my H&H was so low, they didn't know how I was even alive. So I became a patient. I needed blood transfusions. It was horrible. I almost died. So I had lost so much weight around this time. I was so skinny. I was skin and bones. I couldn't even sit on my butt. And if you know me, I have a natural BBL. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to brag, but I didn't ask for this butt and I don't show it off, okay? But I was born with this. I can't help it. But my butt had dissolved just about. I couldn't even sit down. That's how thin I was. I had to use pillows and things. I had lost so much weight. And it was a result, and I'll explain it. It was a result of the abortion that I had had. I had the most horrendous tumors. And I know that it was related to the abortion. So they saved my life. Cedars-Sinai, okay, I can drag you for having dust jungles under the desk and being filthy, but I could also give you credit. And Cedars-Sinai saved my life. They saved my life. Those nurses, I was given such red carpet treatment because I was an employee. So I got to experience what celebrity patients experience, you know, where they get a special menu that the chef is like, it's farm to table. You get lobster, you get steak. That was me. That's how they treat their employees when you become a patient. I don't know what you're doing now, Cedars-Sinai, but you guys treated me real good, okay? I mean, I had the same doctor that Farrah Fawcett had, okay? I had one of my main doctor, he was a Persian doctor. Shout out to Iran, okay? They could have taken my womb, but this Persian doctor in Beverly Hills, he was so skilled as a surgeon, because not all surgeons are called to the profession. This doctor was called. He didn't want to go the lazy route that some other doctors told me they would have to give me a hysterectomy. By the way, Black women are given hysterectomies at higher numbers, and probably brown women right behind them. Black women's wombs are under attack. So this Persian doctor, surgeon, he was so skilled that he carved out, I had over 11 tumors. Some of them were as big as, what did they tell me? Like grapefruit. They were killing me. My H&O, I was down to like a 5. You can't live like that. Like going to a 3. I was on the cardiac ICU at Cedars-Sinai. That's how close to death I was. So this surgeon from Iran, the place that we're told to hate them, he carved every tumor out of my womb with precision, and he kept my womb intact. He didn't allow me to go through some early menopausal, like a storm of hormonal disruption that could lead to maybe, who knows, right? He was so skilled. Amazing. So even when I was in the belly of the beast, my father has always looked out for me. He has always, my steps are ordered with grace and mercy. I know you Black Boule wonder, how does she do all this? How does she do all this? She didn't pledge. She's not part of our clique. I'm part of his clique. So if you were ever wondering why I travel, but I don't have a husband, I don't have a trust fund, I'm not in your sorority, I don't carry a Louis Vuitton bag, because guess what? The Louis Vuitton bags that you all carry, your Gucci's and your Hermes bags, all that stuff, your 7 Series Beamers. Yeah, y'all didn't know I'm Boule family, Boule friends. Grew up with the Black Boule. Philadelphia is the birthplace of Jack and Jill. My mother is team light skin. She used to go to parties that I wouldn't be allowed to come to because I don't pass what they call the paper bag test. So me and my darky father, we are not allowed in the parties of the Black Boule in Philadelphia, the Jack and Jill people. Yep. I had a grandmother, she barely did my hair. She was a beautician in Chicago named Stormy. One of her clients was Lena Horne. You didn't come to my grandmother Stormy's beauty shop if you had my kind of hair. You only came if you had a fine grade of hair. She only let me get through because I'm family, okay? She had to charge it to the game and she had to do my hair, okay? So this is Philadelphia for you. A lot of weird stuff. They blame some of this stuff on something called the Willie Lynch letter. Have you ever heard about the Willie Lynch letter and why colorism exists in the Black community? It turns out that the Willie Lynch letter is another fabrication that we're learning. I want to give a shout out to a content creator. Her name is Nyla Says and Sinji. That's right. I don't want the manosphere to come for me because I listen to Sinji. I listen to Nyla Says. I listen to Charisma from Tales from the Cult. I listen to a lot of voices because I am an observer. So I want to give a shout out to Sinji and Nyla Says for debunking the mythical Willie Lynch letter. There was no such thing. This was designed by a group of people who they keep us divided and at war. Yep. Everybody can get that smoke. Okay. That's why I told you I'm gonna have to have I was about to say a coming to Jesus with my Jewish brothers and sisters. We're going to have to have a coming to Jesus then. Maybe that didn't slip out, okay? But even, back to when I got out of the hospital and I did this pro-life Roe v. Wade, it was 40 years, and I talked about that scripture. I knit you together in your mother's womb. I knew you before I knit you together in your mother's womb. I knew you. This is the creator of all. He is a master knitter. So if he knew me before I was in my mother's womb, he knew my child that I aborted before he was in my womb. That means that I violated supreme law. And I am accountable for that. And I've given my testimony of it. I stood up before thousands of people in Los Angeles and I gave my testimony. And I wore that gown that my little Nidorali friends told me I would never complete. It was too difficult, they told me. You have to be a master's level for that pattern. Really? I have to be a master's level? You don't know who I serve. I might be new to reading the knitting language. I didn't grow up with women that were bougie knitters. They taught me to knit and crochet, though. But if I set out to do something, by God, I will do it. So I did this dress, and this is after I came out of the hospital, skin and bones after what I'd gone through. By the way, when I went into some of my knitting boutiques and some of my little Jewish friends, I was looking like an Ethiopian refugee, but they were like, "Oh my God, Jen, you look fabulous. You look fabulous, Jen." I tried on my gown because I had to show my knitterali friends up in Thousand Oaks, even though I was knitting down in Laguna Niguel, I had to show them, because they were like, "Oh my God," because everybody knew I was working on it, because that was all I would ever bring, because I was like 4 months with this project. So I was like always just taking it from all up and down LA, working on it. So they all, they were so interested in it. So I had come to such a completion in it. They say, "Try it on, Jen, try it on." So I went into the bathroom. Now I crocheted this dress according to how I was thick and healthy, okay? To those proportions. But baby, I was looking like Kim Kardashian looks now. So she took her butt away. Kim Kardashian, let me tell you something. It must be this, y'all. Let me tell you something, Kim Kardashian. I'm going to go on a little tangent. You cannot appropriate the bodies of Black and brown women. You can't put a butt in. I know you're Armenian, you got a little butt there, but you can't go around appropriating bodies and then you jump in and out of them like a changeling, like a reptilian. Now you are a flat-butted or small butt. I don't think you'll ever have a flat butt, but now you are blonde and you are dating white guys, even though he's a little soy guy. But I don't know what you're pulling, but we see it. Negrescence sees what you're doing, what you and your family do to negrescence. We know what you're doing. And I'm going to tell you something. What you were doing to negrescence before 2020, you could get away with it. But there's something it's something different. It's hitting different now, okay? Anybody who is going against negrescence and using negrescence as a reptilian agenda of vampirism and parasitical behaviors, it's not going to work out well. You're not going to get away with it very well. Let me tell you, the blacklash. Have you ever heard of blacklash? Yeah, it's a thing. There's something called blacklash. I may have created it just now, but I have a feeling that the Kardashians are going to get a nice dose of blacklash. Okay? And I have spoken, and let it be so. You might do your magic and all that little witchy poo stuff, but baby, you can't come against negrescence that is in right order, who has now opened their eyes to the law. We want to get repatriated. Your little black magic, oh no, baby. Ain't nobody scared of no coven of witches. Who gonna check us, boo? You gonna find out. Like Salty says, fuck around and find out, okay? That's all I have to say. Yeah, so when I went in and tried on this gown, that gown, it just fell, okay? I had no curves. And when I came out of the bathroom, I was in the bathroom thinking, oh no, I look horrible. I was feeling really I felt very insecure about how much weight I had lost, okay? And I came out And I was thinking they were going to say, oh my God, Jen, you've lost so much weight. They did just the opposite. They said, Jen, I told you, they said, Jen, oh my God, you look fabulous. Meanwhile, all of my family and friends were like asking me, they were like, Jen, tell us the truth. Is it something you don't have to hide? Do you have a terminal? Is it terminal? They thought I was about to get up out of here. Well, I almost did, but they thought I was hiding a very serious, thing. But no, I had gone through a lot. My body had gone through a lot, and the recovery was a slow process. I started putting on weight slowly, and boy, did I catch up like it never happened. But again, that dress, to be all a part of this story that winds up again where I know God always wants me to speak to. He knew you before he knit you in your mother's womb. That's powerful. Something to think about. And I'll continue to share more. This has been long. I've just been no slides. This is raw, a little bit of vapors. Yes, I got to get on what is it called? A subscription for this. I'd love it to start coming to me every month. This is really helping my PTSD. It really is. I used to be very anti things, and I was real judgmental when I was a part of the church, mega church culture, Southern California mega church culture. But I'm not like that anymore. Not like that anymore. So I wish I could have been in the chatmosphere, but I'll look at it if I can look at it. I used to look at my live streams. It's harder, and I don't know why I can't look at them, because I used to learn even myself. This has been a almost 4-hour live stream. Whoever is still hanging out with me, this was not planned, but I wanted to speak to healthcare, and I wanted to share just thoughts. And a lot of the agenda that says they're for women, they have to prove that they are, because they don't seem to be able to prove it to me that they properly counsel women and give women aftercare and care about the woman post, even years after. So if you are struggling with guilt from an abortion or multiple abortions, even if you've had miscarriages, because the same amount of grieving and everything is very similar, If you're a man who has encouraged a girlfriend to have an abortion and you're feeling guilty, because men suffer. That's one thing we're going to have to get a lot of healing for. Men suffer. And I know that when we come back to law and order, we're going to have some good conversations. We're going to have some healing, because once a nation is within right standing, healing will break forth. So healing will happen between the races, the gender, the alternative lifestyle people, if they feel that, everybody's divided, nations, all of that. It will be in the proper manner, but there will be peace because the Prince of Peace will see to it. But if you are suffering and you want to be delivered from a decision that you made out of fear, out of scarcity, if your womb is now barren because of so many abortions and you have never had a child and you suffer because of that, every time you see a baby in public and you see a baby of a friend and you've been babyless and now you're in your 50s. If you need healing, I'm going to point you in the direction that I received healing. And I can personally vouch for it. Now, if you're in the Los Angeles area, there is a very special woman, and I will put it in the description box. So you can either go through Rachel's Vineyard, which I went through, and that's how I met her, but she does this work. So if you live in LA proper, you know what I'm saying? That includes Thousand Oaks, because I think she has retreats up there in the valley sometimes. So, and you can do, I would highly recommend her if you are Los Angeles based. If you are anywhere in the country or the world, because it's not just, you don't have to be in this country. This healing is now available to anyone. But if you want to be in person, which I think they have in other countries, go through Rachel's Vineyard. Can somebody, Karen, if you're still in the chatmosphere, can you put, because I think Karen could put a live link now that I modded her up. If you can please put Rachel's Vineyard. Can I do it? I'm going to put a live link for Rachel's Vineyard. And like I said, I'm going to do it after this renders. I'll put it in the description. Let me just see if I can go to their website and get a live link to you in the chatmosphere. I will attempt it. It's rachelsvineyard.org. And I want to tell you, brothers, you men out there, I know that you're hurting, and nobody expects you to be carrying the guilt and the pain, but I want to just extend my arms out to you to let you know that we forgive you. And that's something that some of the brothers that went through my retreat, they took accountability for having pressured women into getting abortions, paying for abortions. They were there for healing too. So it's not just about women. And this weekend retreat is so powerful. It is under the anointing of God's Holy Spirit. But these men felt a strong yearning to apologize to all of the women. And it was a powerful moment. So I know that you men are suffering. We forgive you, and we want you to get your healing. Don't live under self-condemnation forever. There's healing for you too. And I want to thank you all. Sorry that I became a crybaby at the end. But this is a long one, and I haven't eaten anything today, so I will be back with you. I want to get into some more of the constitutional amendments, and I want to get into the Magna Carta, and I just want to start dealing with the paperwork and getting corrected according to law and order, and truly being free. He came to set the captive free. You can be free. So I'll end on that. I love you all, and I will see you very, very soon. And wow, that's it. Okay, love you. I'll get with your comments. I'm sorry I didn't spend a lot of time, but I was just flowing. I was in that flowetry. Shout out to Philadelphia. I was listening to so much music today. And I have something I want to share with you all soon that involves music. All right, take care.